Okay, you have the second day of testimony of the grand jury. You have United States versus Jeffrey R. MacDonald, Eastern District of North Carolina. Day 2, August 13th, 1974. The presiding judge is the Honorable Franklin Dupree. The counsel for the governments, Victor Woerheide, Thomas P. McNamara, and James T. Stroud, Jr. Victor Woerheide questioned Dr. Jeffrey R. MacDonald. Now, Dr. MacDonald, you are the same Dr. MacDonald who was testifying before this grand jury yesterday. Are you not? Yes, sir, I am. And you understand that your testimony this time is given under oath that you took yesterday when you first came in as a witness. Yes, I do. When you were a resident as the surgeon at Columbian Presbyterian, who were you working with and under whose supervision and direction? I was a surgical intern for 12 months. I didn't always work in the Department of Surgery, but my supervisor was the chief of the department of each surgery. Each month you rotate on a service. I'm just trying to ascertain who your close associates were there and who were the people you knew well. The people you knew best are the residents you work with immediately under. You mentioned a few names. Could you mention a few names you would give as character references, say? Howard Bellin. I think he lives in Park Avenue in New York. The name of my residence escapes me now. Were you always a physician? Were you always in a physician status while you were at the Columbian Presbyterian, or did you come there at a time when you were a patient there? I think I had pneumonia in there when I was an intern. Did it require you to be hospitalized? It did. For a period of some weeks or extended period of time? It was a few days. Was there any surgical intervention for this pneumonia, the condition, to tap the lungs, drain the lungs, or anything like that, sir? No. When you were living here in North Carolina at Fort Bragg, did you maintain a bank account at Fort Bragg? Yes. I'm sure we did. When you were living there, did you have a bank account? Yes. Do you remember the name of the bank? No, sir. Was it a joint account you had with Colette? I believe so, yes. Was it a bank on base or in town? On post. On post. Was it a bank or a savings and loan? We had a checking account. I don't know what kind of bank it was in. Was this bank maintained as part of the post facilities? I don't know what they had set up for the members. Was this bank maintained as part of the post facilities? I don't know what they have set up there for military members. It was like a First Bankers Trust Company. It was a regular bank, but they had a branch on post. Where are you living now? Where you live now? Do you maintain a bank account? Surely. Where do you bank? I have 2 bank accounts. What are the banks? Bank of America. Bank of America is my corporate bank account, and the American City Bank is my personal account. They have a branch banking in California, do they not? Surely. Could you specify the branches? The Bank of America is the Huntington Harbor branch. And the American City Bank is, I guess, the Long Beach branch. I don't know. If it's a specific branch name to it. Before I get into different area questions, Dr. MacDonald, you know from the Article 32 hearings, a couple of hairs turned up, specifically on the body collet, now, which have not been positively identified. An effort has been made in the past to obtain hair samples from various individuals, including yourself, and hair samples that were obtained from you, and hair samples obtained from some other people, but not everyone whom it was desired to have hair samples. And in this course of this, As a result of the hair samples that were taken from you, the laboratory reports were submitted by the CID lab at Fort Gordon. As I understand this laboratory report, the final conclusion was they could neither state that one of the hairs corresponded to the other hair sample obtained from you, nor could they say it could not have been a hair sample that came from you. That's incorrect information. As I read the report, Captain MacDonald, I don't have it here. Mr. Woerheide, Dr. MacDonald, as I read the report, that they say that the hair that was taken did not come from enough points. That's incorrect, sir. On your body, they had 12 hair samples from the head, armpits, pubic hairs, legs, and chest. Where else do they have hair? The initial laboratory report stated, without any question, that the hair was dissimilar from my hair. How many points on the head did they take the hair samples? I don't know. Was it more than 1 point? Yes, it was. Can you tell me how many points? I don't remember. I was just standing naked in my room, while they were cutting the hair from me. Did they use scissors? Yes, they did. Who removed the hairs? A physician from Special Forces, I don't remember. Or the hospital, I don't know which one. And where else did they obtain hair from you? Armpits, pubic area, legs. I don't know if they did my arms or not, and the chest. We are well advised, Dr. MacDonald, and we have to rely upon the information that is furnished to us at this time. That in order to make a positive statement with respect to whether or not one of the hairs came from you, they need additional hair samples. We also need... I'd like to respond to that, sir, if I may at this time. Yes? That hair report was very, very clear when it was initially issued from the Fort Gordon laboratory. The laboratory technician issued a specific decision that the hair was dissimilar. There is no question to what that means. To the hair taken from you, which they did examine, but in the second report asked by the prosecutor, they said they needed additional samples. They needed hair from additional points of your body. Now the report is clear to the respect, Dr. MacDonald. I'm not here to debate the matter with you. I'm telling you what the situation is. In addition, we're going to need footprints from you. In addition to that, we're going to ask for a photograph of your body that will reflect the scars and any marks that indicate the injuries against you suffered as a result of assault upon you, or as a result of the medical treatment that resulted from the assault. You did have medical treatment, did you not? That requires the insertion of 2 tubes. I did. In your body? I did. To eliminate the pneumothorax, right? Yes. And the insertion of these tubes, presumably, would have left some sort of mark on your body. Is that correct? Yes. So, at this time, I'm asking you whether you will voluntarily agree to give us some hair samples, to get footprints, and to permit the making of photographs that I have indicated to you. Are you asking me for 4 years, like 4 years later, to give hair samples, footprints, and photographs? That is correct. And we are not only going to ask you, but we are going to ask other persons that will be summoned to appear before the grand jury. You are just a number of individuals whom we will make this request to. I don't see any reason why not. I obviously have to speak with Mr. Siegel. If you wish to consult with Mr. Siegel about this, you are liberty to do so. I would like to resolve this matter now, because if after consulting with Mr. Siegel you inform us that you will not voluntarily cooperate in giving us additional hair samples, then we will have to go before the court and request a court order, and that will take a little time, and if possible, I'd like to obviate that. Can I have a 2-minute recess? Of course. A recess went in place, and then we returned back to Victor Woerheide questioning Jeffrey R. MacDonald. Dr. MacDonald, have you conferred with your attorney? I have, sir. and you're prepared this time to voluntarily agree to permit us to take hair samples, we require the further testing of the hair found on Colette's body and the footprints and the photographs that are requested of you. Sir, the delay was my lawyers essentially writing a memo and Xeroxing a copy of it. The jury foreman has a copy of that. It really answers the question. Will you pass that down here to permit me, as counsel for the gun jury, to examine it? Yes. It is a.
Yes. It is 5 hand-lettered legal sheets.
This is an original and a Xerox copy of it.
There are 3 addendums attached on the back.
This is the original letter and the addendums. Just one single copy of it. Mr. Porter, will you mark this as MacDonald Exhibit number 1 on this date? Did your attorney give you any advice as whether you should consent or refuse to comply with the request that I have made? He requested my reply is essentially what is in the note. If you would like me to read it, I will be glad to do that. I'll read it to the members of the grand jury, and it says to the foreman and members of the grand jury, I assume this is from Mr. Siegel, not from you. That is correct. Because it does not say, at least in the heading, but it is signed at the bottom, Bernard L. Siegel, Michael J. Malley. Attorneys for the witness, Dr. Jeffrey R. MacDonald. 1. It is impossible for the adequately advise Dr. MacDonald as to the appropriateness of the prosecutor's request for hair samples from him on the basis of a few minutes of consultation. I'd like to request that the decision on this matter, well, there's a footnote which I will read. Delay in Dr. MacDonald returning to the grand jury room was caused by my having to handwrite a memo and make photocopies of the attached documents. I would request the decision on this matter be deferred until after the grand jury reconvenes from the lunch recess. Dr. MacDonald does agree now to the footprints being taken of him and also agrees to body photographs taken. I apologize for any slight inconvenience that this might result from my request to be able to further consider the hair matter, but I know no legitimate reason that the government's attorney did not advise Dr. MacDonald or myself last night that they intend to make such a request. It would have allowed us reasonable opportunity to consider the issue. We could have been able to supply the grand jury with a prompt answer this morning without needless to delay to your work. It says number 2, I want to make clear from my request that my request for this opportunity to consider the hair matter further does not arise from any reluctance to cooperate fully with the grand jury, but it does arise from the fact government attorneys in the prior military grand jury investigation, that's Article 32 of the proceedings, did attempt to partially succeed in altering the reported laboratory analysis of the hair samples taken from 9 different parts of MacDonald's body. I'm attaching the memo to the report of the Army Crime Lab technician Janice Gleason, identified as case unit MPR 1277 70, carrying the dates July 20th and 29th of 1970, which evaluated the hair samples, 9 hair samples, in fact, taken from Dr. MacDonald, compared with the hair samples found on the right and left hand of the body of Mrs. Colette MacDonald. The report states at the top of page 2, comparative examinations of the hairs from Exhibit E4 and E5 can be revealed to be dissimilar to the hairs from Exhibit E305 through E313. The word dissimilar is underscored at the bottom as, quote, emphasis added that this here, that it says, that is, Miss, it says here, Gleason, conclude the hairs in the hands of Miss MacDonald were dissimilar to those on 9 different parts of Dr. MacDonald's body, and I'm enclosing a copy of the letter on the 25th of 1970 on August by the government attorney, Captain Clifford Summers, asking for a so-called clarification of the perfectly clear report by Miss Gleason. Finally, I'm enclosing the reply of September 2nd, 1970, and Miss Glisson, for the benefit of the reporter. Among the things I'm troubled by, the government's present request is the following: the fact that the government's attorneys today attempted to deny the categorical conclusions of Miss Glisson's original report, and the failure to tell the grand jury of the letter by Captain Summers asking for a change in the way Miss Glisson wrote her report. 2. There was, to our knowledge, no meaningful areas of Dr. MacDonald of which hair samples were not taken. The hair samples were taken from several different places on the head, armpits, both arms, both legs, chest area, and pubic area. And the arm investigations. Number 3, the arm investigations negligently failed to take hair samples from the body of Mrs. MacDonald, Kimberly MacDonald. Therefore, there was no way in 1970 and no way in 1974 that the hair found on Ms. MacDonald's hand can be checked to see if it was from her own body or from the body of her daughter Kim. Now the attachment 1 is a lab report, which I think is made under the date of July 29, 1970, and it lists exhibits of pill vials, 2 of which contain hairs found in the right and left hands of Colette MacDonald, and 11 of which refer to pill vials containing hair removed from various points of Captain MacDonald's body. These concluding statements, comparative examinations of the hairs from Exhibit E4 and E5 revealed to be dissimilar to the hairs from E305 through E313. The report is signed by Mrs. Janice S. Glisson, author Boyd Connors, and Joel Lesson. Again, is attachment later is an attachment letter or memorandum or that's dated 25 August 1970. It is captioned "Subject clarification of the lab report," referring the report by its number. It is addressed from the Chief Chemist of the Criminal Investigation Division Laboratory at Fort Gordon. The first paragraph says and refers to the report I just read. The second paragraph follows: "It is critical importance that the government know and be able to show the meaning of the language that is in examinations of hair from Exhibits E4 and E5 revealed to be dissimilar to the hairs of Exhibits E0305 and E313. Does this mean the hair on E305 and E313 is so dissimilar to E4 and E5 that the source of the hair in E305 and E313 is positively eliminated as a possible hair source in the E4 and E5? Or alternatively, does that mean that the source of the hair in E305 through E313 can neither be identified nor eliminated as the source of the hair in E4 and E5? If possible, I request that a written reply be afforded directly to me, clarifying this report, and thank you for your consideration. The letter went out with the signature of Clifford L. Summers, Captain Jagcor, Government Counsel. The final attachment is a memo to the letter I just read, and it's signed by Janice S. Glisson, Arthur B. Connors, and James P. Ryan. The following statement is to be added to page 2 of the subject report. Therefore, it is the opinion of the examiners that the hair exhibits of E4 and E5 probably did not originate from the same point. The words "same point" are underscored sources. I'll hear in the context did not originate from the same point. Didn't originate from the same point as the hairs from E305 through E313. However, it must be pointed out, opinion regarding positively eliminating the subject as a possible source of hair cannot be given without examining numerous other point sources of body hair from the subject. Captain MacDonald, and I don't deliberately use the military title, in view of the fact that, as I understand it, on advice of your counsel, you are consenting to have footprints made and the photograph made, and I will ask a break at the noon recess to contact the local FBI office and arrange for them to take photos and make photographs. I'll arrange for them to take footprints and make photographs, and we will hold in abeyance. I understand you are neither refusing nor consenting at this time, but you and your attorneys wish to give a further consideration, and I am going to hold you in abeyance to the matter of taking additional hair samples. I might say, Captain MacDonald, I don't think that there is any misunderstanding on the part of the grand jury or myself concerning the sense of the meaning of the documents attached here, and I'll explain what my sense. And if the question is that you may so state, comparative examination of the hairs from exhibits E4, E, and E5, that hairs taken from Colette's body revealed to be dissimilar from hairs from exhibits E305 through 313. The sense of my understanding is they couldn't say if they matched the hair that was taken from your body, which included E305 through E313, and that's the way and that's the way I understand it. They couldn't say, yes, we identify this as Dr. MacDonald's hair. It reads different to me. You're entitled to interpret it in your own way, but that's the way that I interpret it. It doesn't say we should eliminate Dr. MacDonald entirely as the source of the hair found in Colette's hand, but we can't say that he is the source of the hair. So the government says that doesn't mean, in substance, does mean that you've been eliminated. Can you say positively that the hair found in Colette's hands did not come from Dr. MacDonald? They came back and they said, no, we can't positively. All we can say is that we didn't take enough hair samples to arrive at the definitive determination that we need those hair samples from the other parts of the body. Now, I might say, Dr. MacDonald, just for edification, I discussed this matter with a technician from the FBI laboratory in Washington, and it is, in my opinion, based upon this technician told me this technician is independent of the CID lab at Fort Gordon, Georgia. They made the comparison. It is, in my opinion, there are enough hair samples were taken from you, and that at that time the experienced personnel who were not engaged in the type of the work that involves the taking of hair samples and making the comparisons, that there are not enough hair samples were taken at the time. And I was told, with the passage of time and the aging process, the changing climate, it becomes increasingly difficult with the passage of time to make a positive identification. But what we are trying to do is, in this grand jury, with you living in a different climate now than you've lived then, with the climate and then with the change in diet, it becomes difficult to make, and it becomes increasingly difficult with the passage of time to make a positive identification. But what we are trying to do in this grand jury, it is an investigative grand jury. We are trying to run out all legal logical leads. I've informed you that we are not only asking you, but we will ask other witnesses summoned here to appear before the grand jury to give hair samples. We feel that this case is sufficient of importance. You lost your wife, your 2 children, to a complete, thorough, exhaustive investigation to attempt to correct the mistakes that were made in the past. To attempt to overcome the deficiencies of the previous investigation, and out of a matter as justice to you and to Colette, Kimberly, and Kristen, to anybody whose finger is pointed at you, anybody else as a possible suspect, we are going to go all the way. That is what we are asking you to exceed in this request. Sir, this is not easy for me to appear here. This is my family that I lost. I get accused of it, and they don't even interview me. We are not accusing you of it. I'm talking back in 1970. They don't interview me for 6 weeks. Although I go to their office and ask, don't you have any suspects? Don't you want me to talk? No. We don't. We have suspects in custody. 6 weeks go by. 14 MPs trampling through the House. Then they have to spend 4 years reliving. And then I have to spend 4 years reliving this. And I come back here in 1974, and you ask me for hair samples. I'm under oath, sir. Those investigators and any other hair case have never asked for a rewording. Under oath, that is not a routine procedure. That is changing evidence. Dr. MacDonald, you have complained. I asked for a civilian investigation in 1970. The Army investigated itself. You had the jurisdiction, I had no doubt from my own review that what happened to you for making certain complaints as to the investigation. You could never reconstruct the initial hour of that crime scene. Dr. MacDonald, we are going to do the best we can. And all I'm asking you for is a voluntary cooperation. I'm here to cooperate, sir. I understand, and I expect you after the noon recess. I've never refused to talk to anyone. I've never pleaded the Fifth Amendment. I understand that. My lawyers got to me. I offered to give them a polygraph examination. On the basis of what happened herefore, expect you will consent to give us hair samples. Now you have offered to give a polygraph. They say you offered to give a polygraph examination. This time, in the aid of the presence of grand jury, will you agree to submit a polygraph examination? I don't want no recess, sir. Let me talk about that with my attorney at lunchtime. And I think while we are discussing these examinations, would you consent? Now, I'm just throwing this out. Raise the question with your attorney, and I understand that at the time Dr. Zadoff examined you, there was some time to consider. The doctors of Walter Reed examined you. There was some consideration given, asking you to take a sodium animal truth serum and submit to an examination under the influence of this truth serum. So when I ask you to consider discuss with your attorney, cooperating with the grand jury to that extent, and aiding the grand jury to the extent of taking both a polygraph and sodium animal examination. Let me make a comment about the sodium animal interview. This was discussed with Dr. Sadoff, and it was discussed at the Article 32 hearing. And Dr. Sadoff's recommendation was that unless there was a overriding need for sodium animal interview, unless there were facts, and I repeat the word facts, hear me, facts, there was no need for a sodium animal interview. That sodium animal recreates. May I assist you in saying that it caused you to relive the experience concerning which you are being examined, and that you would constitute a painful ordeal, and in the opinion at the time, you should be spared from that experience. Right. Dr. MacDonald, the event that happened 4 years ago, I think you will agree that it is high time that the matter be resolved. But resolved in what fashion, sir? To cover up the CID investigation again? No, I'm not trying to cover up the CID investigation. The second Army investigation was finished a year and a half ago. Now this is unbelievable. This case came to me a month ago. Sir, I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying the Army reinvestigation, this alleged 10,000 or 3,000 page reinvestigation by the Army, and the Army's handling of by the Army. We are going to go into that. We are going to forward you the opportunity. That's one of the reasons why you're here, to inquire into the acts connected with the investigation and subsequent handling of the case. Now, that may constitute a criminal offense, and I'm going to go into you with that. As a matter of fact, we are going to go into a number of different other people, and we will go into detail, but I don't think at this time that we don't want to get into that. And I mentioned some of these things that you can discuss them with in-depth with Mr. Siegel, Mr. Malley, and make your own decisions with respect to those matters. Okay, can I discuss them at lunchtime? The polygraph and the sodium animal? Yes, I might say, if you decline to give hair samples, we will seek a court order. With respect to the polygraph and sodium animal, I will not seek a court order. That has to be voluntary upon your part. Okay. My clock almost says 11:30. Do you want to go on with other questions at this time, or do you want to recess until 1 o'clock?
We lost so much time. I'd just as soon go ahead for at least another half hour or so.
By the way, sir, I'd like to state for the record that these recesses of such length are not my idea. I'd like to make it clear that I'd like to come here and testify. You understand that you were sitting there alone and your attorneys had taken off, and you were informed that Mr. McNamara, and you were informed Mr. McNamara would like you to proceed with the matter, but you, of course, had wait to return with your attorneys. Dr. MacDonald, while you were at Fort Bragg, I think you said that you came there sometime in August. Who are your closest, most intimate associates? I've heard the names of Lieutenant Harrison is one I remember. Lieutenant Harrison was not a close friend until midwinter, actually just before the 17th of February 1970, and thereafter he became a better friend. I hate it. Really sounds derogatory. I don't mean to be derogatory, but sort of a hanger-on after that. You know what I mean. Is his full name Ronald Harrison? Correct. Do you know whether or not he's been discharged by the Army? I presume he's not been discharged. The last communication I had with him was about a year ago. He was going to school at Fort Benning, Georgia. It was a type of school that leads to career opportunities, so I presume that he is in the Army still. Now you say he came into your circle of friends. Let's go back to August. Who were the closest friends? I believe Captain Frank Moore. I met him immediately. He lived in Fayetteville. I don't know if he still lives there. Was he a medical officer? No, he was in the Medical Service Corps. There were a lot of that mentioned that the Medical Service Corps officer is another officer attached to the medical detachments, and normally that what they do is shepherd through the doctor through the Army. The doctor comes in the Army, and he doesn't know the Army, and the Medical Service Corps handles a lot of the administrative matters while the physician handles the medical matters. So Captain Frank Moore was initially my Medical Service Corps officer. Now, will you give us some other names, please? I don't know. I don't know. Actually, how soon I met Captain James Williams, who was another medical law service officer. Lieutenant Thosen, he was a lieutenant. There are lots of physicians. Not lots, but initially there were 2 or 3 physicians involved, but they were leaving and that service as I was entering, and a new group sort of came in. Captain Robert Butner, Captain Charles Probst. I believe he now resides in Philadelphia. When he was the medical officer, that was probably my closest circle of friends. Were they personal friends, or were they friendly friends in the sense they come over to your house? They knew Colette. They knew your way of life. They knew your family environment. Right? Both of them were friends from work. They were friends of the family. They knew Colette and the children. Did Colette have any special friends while she was there? I know that she was going to extension classes, and I know that you were out of town occasionally moonlighting. You had one car. She would depend on other people for transportation, I assume. She had her companions at the school. She had neighbors. Right. She was associated. She would see more of the neighbors that were home during that time than I would. The people next door, the Kalins, he's the chief warrant officer, Don Kalin, and his wife, Mrs. Kalin. I don't know their first name. She was relatively friendly with Captain Butner's wife, Carol Butner. She went to school with a girl who testified at the Article 32 hearing, who I never met her, and I believe her name was Krista. I don't know the individual. Apparently, Colette drove to school with her. Do you recall any special friends that she had? Not offhand, sir. Now, from the time that you were first sent to Fort Bragg, on how many occasions did you leave there for any reason at all, because of training or emergency or anything of that sort? How many total times? If you can recall them, I'm asking you for your best recollection. You mean up to February 17th? Yes, I assume you didn't leave Fort Bragg after February except to go to Philadelphia. Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. to Walter Reed. Correct. I went to Texas. I went to Puerto Rico. I went to the North Carolina mountains. I don't know, once or twice on training exercises. I moonlighted, and that meant several nights away from home. When did you start moonlighting? I remember sometime in the fall. I don't remember what month I started in Cape Fear Valley Hospital. You moonlight two hospitals, Cape Fear and Hamlet. Hamlet Hospital. Did you moonlight any other place? I don't think so. I don't think that I've ever worked. Was a third place that I received privileges at. It was privileges at Lumberton, but I don't think I ever worked there. Now, when was it you went to Texas? I was there for medical coverage for JUMP, an airborne jump of special forces, medics who are training down there. And it was a weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I guess Sunday, in December of '69. Would it be early December? I don't know, I guess. Sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, can you place a relationship between those two holidays? Must have been around early December. It wasn't right next to Christmas. As a matter of fact, you had some house guests over for Thanksgiving, did you not? Yes. Did your mother come down? I don't know if my mother was there. I think the Kasabs were in town. My in-laws were there. The Kasabs were there. Weren't the Kasabs there around Christmas? Wasn't your mother around there at Thanksgiving? I thought the Kasabs were there at Thanksgiving. I think you're right. You're okay. Right? Okay. My mother was there for Thanksgiving. We had a big dinner. The Butners were over there. Ron Harrison was over. And the Kasabs were down for Christmas. That's correct. All right. When your mother was there for Thanksgiving, what were the arrangements in the house? Did the girls sleep together? Or did your mother occupy one of the beds? Kimberly's bed? I don't remember, sir. I just don't remember. Stay with you, did she not? Yes. She slept on the couch, or she could have slept in Kimberly's bed, or Christy's bed. Now, when the Kasabs were there, what were the household arrangements? I don't remember. Did they stay with you, or did they stay at a hotel nearby? I assume they stayed with us. I don't think I would let them stay in a motel. I presume they stayed with us. So they probably used Kimberly's bed, and Kimberly would either sleep with Christy or on the couch with us. Kimberly had a double bed, didn't she? Or what you'd call a queen size bed? Double bed. I don't think it was queen size. And Chris had somewhat of a similar bed, the bottom half of a set of bunks. Do you recall how long your mother was there on your visit over Thanksgiving? She was working, so I assume it was just Thanksgiving. Maybe Thanksgiving weekend. That would be a long weekend. Wednesday to Sunday, I presume. Unless, how about the Kasabs? I don't know. I guess they were there 4 or 5 days. Do you recall a Christmas party, New Year's party during this visit? There weren't. They weren't there at New Year's, I don't think. No. I think we went to the Officers Club at Pope Air Force Base for New Year's Eve. So the Kasabs weren't there at that time. Yes, Christmas. For the opening of the gifts, they were there. How about Puerto Rico? When did you go there? Sometime, I'm trying to think who my commanding officer would have been at that time. It'd make it some easier. I don't know. I guess it was September. It wasn't August. I don't think September, October. Somewhere in there. And that was training exercise? Correct. You flew down in a military plane? Right. And you're getting fatigues? Right. Did you carry much gear or equipment with you? We carried, I guess, a big duffel bag and whatnot. Were you there carrying medical gear, medical kit, or were you carrying out jump gear or survival gear? Or we didn't get to carry our own jump gear. That was transported. I had a large duffel bag with my own gear. The medical gear was transported separately. I may have had a small kit, an M3 8 or 8 kit. I'm not sure. I probably just had my personal gear for the actual transportation. And as their clothes that you would use, they were the sort of clothes that you would use out in the field rather than around base. In other words, not a Class A uniform, but fatigues. I had a khaki uniform with me. I think we were told to bring one for off-duty time or something. I think I think we were told that we would have a day off in Ponce or San Juan before we left, I think. I know we had a separate khaki uniform with us. Now, during this period of time, did you go on emergency leave? Was this some sort of family crisis you took away from the training? Yes, it was. Was that while you were in Puerto Rico? Yes, it was. It was. I wasn't actually. Yes, at that point, I don't think I was in Puerto Rico. I was on an island off Puerto Rico. I received the notification for a need for emergency leave. And what was the nature of this emergency? At the time, I didn't know. I believe I was told, that my brother had been hospitalized. I subsequently found out he was in a state hospital. He had a bad reaction to drugs and apparently beat up some policemen. Was put in a straitjacket and was taken to the state hospital with handcuffs on. I think he had broken a wrist or something. And he drove through the window of the state hospital. And he dove through the window of the state hospital. So I arrived there a day and a half later and was still sort of. I don't know if I don't think he was still in restraints. He wasn't in restraints, but he had been medicated with something called Thorazine, which is a heavy tranquilizer. Where was the state hospital located, Dr. MacDonald? On Long Island. I guess it was Islip Island. I'm told that there were some pilgrims state hospital in that area. Could that be it? Yes, probably that's right. You think it's more likely been pilgrims than Islip? Yes, I think so. Is that there near Patchcall? It is. I guess 12 to 15 minutes. Now, when you proceeded from this small island off the coast of Puerto Rico, how'd you travel? Did you travel through? Did you have military orders that permitted you to go up there, or did you have to go commercially? I landed at JFK, so it must have been a commercial flight. I don't remember where I hooked up to the commercial flight. I took a flight back. I think I took a military flight either back to Atlanta or directly back to Fort Bragg. Then got a civilian flight. I honestly don't remember, but I landed at JFK on a civilian jet. Did you come back with all your gear, or did you leave it down there because you were leaving on an emergency basis? I left some of it down there. Do you remember what you were wearing when I came back? Yes. The best I can say is if I came back on a military plane, I was probably still in khakis, sort of the jungle gear, and then I changed at Fort Bragg. I came all the way back, changed at Fort Bragg. If I came all the way back, if I came all the way, I honestly don't remember. If I came back from San Juan, I probably would have put on the khakis. When you got up to Kennedy, where did you go? I'm not sure I landed at Kennedy. Yes, I landed at Kennedy and I drove out to Long Island. No one met you? I am confusing that trip in my mind. I remember I arrived at Kennedy one other time in a Class A's and my brother picked me up. Obviously, not this time. So I'm trying to remember. I presume my mother would have picked me up. I really have no recollection of this. Did you stay with your mother? I'm sure I did. How long were you there? 2.5, 3 days, something like that. Did you succeed in helping with the problems that your brother was having? Yes, I mean they weren't resolved, but I helped. He was eventually discharged from the state mental hospital. The problem wasn't resolved. Do you recall, or whether or not at that time when he was arrested and apparently reacted in a very violent manner, that your mother was somehow involved in that? I was I was told bits and pieces of that. I believe the psychiatrist that I talked to at the state hospital and by my mother, but my mother didn't ever really fill me in on the entire episode. She was present apparently when he was handcuffed. I can't figure out from the conversation whether she was trying to prevent the handcuffing or whether she's allowing the handcuffing and the handcuffing my brother Jay. James was being violent. I don't know whether she was preventing the police from their actions or not preventing them. Well, the sum and the substance of it is, did she suffer any bruises, abrasions, or injuries? Was she slapped, kicked during the course of this incident, or whether it was Jay or somebody else? No, I don't think so. Did you visit with any friends while you're in Patch Call that time? Not that I remember. You don't recall seeing any friends at all? Friends of my mother probably would have been stopped by the house, but I don't. I think I have the name correct of this name that is cropped up, and I'm going to throw it out there right now at you. How about Carol Lawson? No. Do you know who I mean? She's an old girlfriend of mine. And you didn't see her on that occasion? No, sir. Now you mentioned another trip we picked up by your brother. Do you recall what the occasion was? Yes, I was coming back home. I finished jump school at Fort Benning, Georgia. Reported in, and I believe I reported. Let me get this straight. Between reporting from Fort Benning, Georgia, to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, I think because I don't think I had my Green Beret yet. That's probably before Colette and the kids came down to Fort Bragg, wasn't it? That's correct. You mentioned a couple of other trips to the North Carolina mountains. Was that in the fall of 1969? Yes, it was. Or was it the winter of 69-70? In the winter of 69-70? Yes, I'm trying to place time. Was it in November? It was in the fall, sir. October, November. There was no snow yet. Or early December, or late December, or January? No. Early February? No, I don't think it was in the winter. It was in the fall. The best we can place it is sometime around October, November, or possibly early December. Is that it? I know when I went once. I went shortly after I got to Fort Bragg, so that one was in September. I believe the other one, I don't remember it, if there were two, but if there was two, the first one was about a week. I distinctly remember it was a long training trip. I was probably there about a week. And the second duration was shorter. Right. Now, I know there's been some talk about this famous jump party down in Texas. I won't go into that this time. Feel free, sir. I'll say for a later point, but I just want to know whether there was any social activity when you went down North Carolina mountains comparable to the so-called jump party. No, sir. There were some unusual events, but it wasn't similar. It wasn't a similar type of party. Well, I don't quite know what you mean by unusual events, baby. You better just illocate briefly. I don't want you to go in any detail. We met some moonshiners. That's not unusual down in North Carolina mountains, is it? Is to me. I thought that my medical service corps officer was kidding me. They came out of the woods with brown paper bags, squatted down next to the campfire. It was unbelievable. With a jug. In the bag. They didn't say a word for about 20 minutes. I kept looking at them, and finally he said, "Take a sip." And then this went on for so long time. To make a long story short, we ended up about 4 a.m. in his mother's house. I was taking a piece of shrapnel out of his wife's shoulder that he had put there when he had discharged a gun into the floor. It got a little unusual. It was an old shrapnel wound, not that night, and he got absolutely roaring drunk. This moonshiner, and he kind of demanded that I take it out. So I look at the medical service corps officer, and he said, if he says take it out, you take it out. So I took it out, and we departed. So I got to camp about 4:30 a.m., and we got up there, and we got up about 5 a.m. Now we're going to go back to the occasion you took the emergency leave and traveled down to Puerto Rico, jumping from Puerto Rico up to Pachagal. You remember at that time you were short on funds, had to borrow some money? You mean for Puerto Rico? Yes. You were short on funds, had to borrow some money? You mean for Puerto Rico? Yes. I don't distinctly remember it, no. I'm sure offhand, I was sure it was offered by the guys that were there with me, but I don't remember. I don't know if I took it or not. Do you remember borrowing some of the money to go up to Long Island? No. Now, during the Article 32, you were asked about a series of 4 questions that opened up an area, but they didn't close it. The matter was not resolved, and I don't know. I don't have the transcript, but you were asked, did you go at the time go to a certain bar, which was a bar that apparently your brother Jay frequented it. The shortstop bar. Shortstop bar. Where is it located? I don't remember. I've been into a lot of bars to bail my brother out. It was in New York in Greenwich Village. I think that's where it was. So while you were there, you went down to New York Greenwich Village and you went to this bar. Right. What is the purpose of going to that bar? To find out who had been selling the drugs. What drugs was your brother using? He said he'd been taking amphetamines, uppers, and then the night he had this bad trip, he told me someone had given him 2 capsules, a typical drug abuser comment. And I said, what were they? And he didn't know. He presumed they were mescaline or LSD. Actually, I presume that because he was having he was in a tremendous hallucinatory state. He was having wild hallucinations. And I asked him, it was apparent he had been speeding, taking amphetamines for a long time. I had been aware of, and on reflection, then some of those prior actions seemed a lot more in tune with his speeding. For instance, he used to drive from New York to Chicago nonstop, and I used to wonder how the hell can anyone do that? It's a long drive, and he used to stay up all the time. He used to party day and night, and it never occurred to me that my brother would be taking amphetamines. All right, you were asked for this. When you were at the bar, you had seen certain people referring to 4 people that your brother associated with. Right. Tell us about that. I don't believe I was asked that. That was indirect. I'm not, disagreeing with you. I say they opened up a certain area, but they didn't pursue it. I'm reading from the file, from reading the implication was I may have seen these people. Reading Article 32, I know they were referring to a group of 4 people who allegedly frequented that bar. Now tell us about it. The implication was that the implication that was gotten through a lot of the testimony that was really third hand or fourth hand hearsay. It was unbelievable. My brother knew a group that corresponded roughly to the group of individuals I'd seen at my house on February 17th. You went to this bar? Yes. You saw the people in that bar? Right. Now tell us about them. I spoke to a couple of individuals, Caucasian males. At that point, I had absolutely no reference to this group until CID agent Benny Hawkins walks in the Article 32 hearing with his wild, bizarre story about a group of 4 people, including a black male and a blonde female. But the short start bar, I was unaware of this group. Well, tell us. Describe to us the people you saw at the shortstop bar. They were just bums, a bunch of guys that didn't work for a living. A lot of my brother's friends are that way. They live with girls. One of them goes on welfare, and 6 or 8 of them live together. One gets welfare, two gets welfare. One works construction. Construction is good money, so they share the money. They're just bums. They sit around, drink all night, and now I find out they're taking a lot of drugs. All right, and what they look like? How old were they? How tall? Would you give us a physical description? To tell you the truth, Mr. Woerheide, I'm really dragging. This is hazy stuff I'm trying to tell you now and make it sound positive. I had an argument in the shortstop bar with a couple of guys who said they knew Jay. Been told that the bartender was one of the guys supplying Jay with speed. So I got a little pushy with them, and there was a little scuffle between there on, and I hit the guy, something like that. And honestly, I don't know. He was a Caucasian male, brown hair. I'd say possibly 6 feet tall. Alrighty, referring to the bartender. I don't know if he was a bartender or not. He was sitting at the end of the bar. There was another bartender, but I was told he was a bartender. I don't know if he's a bartender. I come flying in from Puerto Rico and find my brother in the mental institution, get him out, and I'm really mad. And I went to New York City and spent an hour talking to some people. Where's Jay? Oh, he's he's out on the island. I heard I heard he had some trouble type thing, so I got into this shooting contest with this dope. You say a shooting contest, you're shooting off your mouth, and he was shooting off his mouth. Yeah, I asked him. There was a little pushing and shoving. I went up to him and I said, "Do you know Jay MacDonald?" And he said, "Yeah, I know Jay." And I said, "Do you know he is in the state hospital? What's that effect?" And the guy said, "Well, no, I didn't know." And I said, "Yeah, he had a bad reaction to some pills someone gave him." And he said, "Oh, or something." And I said, "Yeah." And I probably told him he was an asshole and heard that he had given him the pills. And he said he didn't, and who the hell did I think I was sitting in a public bar accusing him of that? So the words got a little heated, and I pushed him. He pushed me. I hit him. Was there a blonde woman there? A girl? Not that I remember. I'm sure there was in a bar at some point, but I don't remember. This fella have a mustache? I don't think that guy that I had the action with. There were several people there, but that guy I was talking to, he did not have a mustache. I don't think. Was there a black man there? No, not that I remember. My brother have a lot of trouble. He's my older brother, and I've had to bail him out a lot. Mr. Foreman, my clock says 12 o'clock.
All right, let's take a lunch recess to about.
When do you want to reconvene the grand jury? Do you want to make it 1:15?
$1.15, all right.
The hearing gavelled out for lunch recess. Then the afternoon session of the grand jury reconvened at 1:15 p.m. Victor Woerheide returned to questioning Jeffrey R. MacDonald. Now, Dr. MacDonald, you do realize that this time your testimony, as on any occasion when you're recalled before the grand jury, is under oath previously administered to you? Yes, I do. Dr. MacDonald, you had the opportunity to consult with your counsel, Mr. Siegel, and Mr. Malley. Malley, concerning your request for taking hair samples. Yes, I have. And what is your response? Can I refer to some notes? Yes. I don't. I am willing to give hair samples to a qualified technician, hopefully from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, not the Army. I have consulted with the Special Agent Don Murphy of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and he has told me he will arrange a qualified physician or doctor to take those hair samples under the Federal Bureau of Investigation supervision. Okay. Is that satisfactory arrangement with you? I'd just like to make some comments in reference to that. And we will also, I might say, probably have to present a technician who specializes in the examination of hair samples. Fine. I'd just like to get to making some comments on the record, reference to the hair samples I'm agreeing, and I will give whatever hair samples are requested or taken by the alleged expert that will be on the hair procedure. but I'd like to make several comments. One is that we have been led to believe that by the CID agents and Fort Gordon Laboratory that the hair samples found in my wife's hands were of 2 to 3 inches in length. I'd just like to remind the grand jury I was an airborne Green Beret physician at the time, and I had no hair, except possibly armpit hair, of 2 to 3 inches in length. It's just absurd to say I did. The second thing is that personally, my counsel, myself, problem with the original wording of the hair sample from the report, from the Fort Gordon, Georgia report. It sounds very clear. I'd also like to state and get it on record that even if these hair samples taken now 4 years later were somehow found to match up beautifully with the hair samples in my wife's hands, I would not consider that as a very significant finding in view of testimony taken under oath in the Article 32 hearing. That not only I moved her hands, but several other people moved her hands before the hair samples were taken, including another physician. And I'd just like to be understood. This hair sample became a tremendous problem at the Article 32 hearing. And the problem should be obviated by what I just said. The physician who came to announce death didn't even wash his hands before he went from Kimberly and Chris to Colette. And her hands were moved several times. Before these alleged samples were taken. Dr. MacDonald, all these facts will be brought to the attention of the grand jury. I just felt if, and you, of course, I'm not objecting to your expressing your views. You're free to express your views perfectly, and I'm aware of the various considerations that have been stressed and emphasized in the remarks you've just made. There are other matters of concern to me. There are matters within my knowledge, too. And as I explained to you previously, I doubt this examination will be definitive. I doubt this examination will be definitive for various reasons. Nevertheless, in view of the fact that it became such an element of controversy so far, the investigation was concerned. So the Article 32 hearing was concerning, and I believe it was made an element of controversy, not so much by the submissions made by the government in connection with the case, but by cross-examination, and the arguments that were presented by your counsel at the time, that we now have to go in and attempt to resolve some of these questions. Now, as far as I care to make a statement on these hair samples, I appreciate your cooperation. We'll notify the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation will make the necessary arrangements. Right. Now, shortly before the break, we were talking about Patrick on your visit to this bar in Greenwich Village. Sir, can I say two things with reference to this prior conversation that I remember? Well, what I do when I leave here, by the way, is I get debriefed. I have to try to remember what I said and what was said in this room, and then tell them my answers. So that's what I do for the last hour and a half and things come up. Your memory's jogged again, and you asked me, I believe you asked me when I got to the airport who picked me up, and I said Jay. On the trip? Right. Now your memory's being refreshed by talking to your attorneys and giving you the matter further consideration. I just want to make the record more complete. And in addition, I believe my brother was a sometime bartender at the Shortstop also. I don't think he ever mentioned that. I don't know if in fact he was, but I think he was a bartender on and off at the same bar. I think that's how I got there. I thank you for bringing it to our attention. Now, when you let Patch call to return to Fort Bragg, or did you go back to Fort Bragg after the emergency leave? Surely I went back to Fort Bragg. You didn't go to Puerto Rico? No, I don't think so. Just came back to Fort Bragg? I believe so. Do you remember how you let Patch go? No. Did you take the train? I could have. That would have been an unusual occurrence. I don't remember taking a train. It's more likely that my mother drove me to the airport. You don't remember going to the train station? I took a train one trip back to the island, but I don't remember when it was. I don't know. I just don't distinctly recollect it at this time. Well, traveling from Batchgall to Manhattan, Greenwich Village, would you have taken a train for that trip? No, usually not. How would you make that trip? You drive, it's 60 miles. Is there a commuter train service between Patchcall and Manhattan? There are some trains. It's not really a good commuter service. Is that where the Long Island Railroad runs? Yes. The train station at Patchcall, the Long Island Railroad train? Right. And people use that for going back and forth to Manhattan? Yes. Is it more expedient? Isn't that quicker than going by car and by trying to find a place to park in Manhattan? No, the train trip is 2 hours, and driving is an hour because of the number of stops on the train. Do you remember an occasion on this trip making using the train? No. Do you remember that you did not use the train? No. You remember on one occasion that did travel by train? Yes. The only distinct recollection I have was going. I don't know. I would get to the airport to the train station, but I went out to the island by train only one time. I don't really remember the other way. It may have happened. I also don't remember. I'm going to ask you this time to recall best you can the event. Every person to whom you made a statement to recounting the events the night of the 16th and 17th, 1970. At this juncture, I'm not going to ask you what you said to them. I'm just going to ask you if you recall talking to various people who I will mention by name. If I recall, if you recall talking to other people on various occasions and giving them some statements, however brief and lacking detail, concerning the events of the night. Now, among the first people that arrived at your house on that morning were Lieutenant Polk and a CID agent named Micah and the CID agent named Trevere. Micah and Trevere were MPs. They were MPs. Right. Did you make a statement concerning them, what had transpired upon the revival? Not a statement. I'm not talking about a formal statement. I understand that. Did you give them some information to them? I listened to their testimony and they told me that they were the ones I was talking to. I wasn't aware at the time. I didn't know it was Micah. Trevor and Polk I talked to some. Talked to some of the MPs of that house, yes. And you told them what transpired prior to their arrival, right? Yes. And I mean the fact that there were intruders and that you had been assaulted, and after you recovered awareness following the interlude, certain things that you certain things you observed. That's right. Certain things you did. Yes. And I came to your house approximately 4 o'clock. Is that slightly before 4? That was in the testimony. I don't know, sir. I don't know if it was. I don't know if you want my answer to be what I know, or now to be considered fact, like times and stuff. I wasn't aware when they arrived. It was 4 o'clock. Do you follow me? Yes. But there's somewhere within that time frame. But it was somewhere in that time frame. It was early morning, and it was during the night and before dawn of that time of year. Right. Now I know there were certain medics, and that I'm informed came to the house. Names of here I got is Dunchero, Gillespie, and a readable name, and Yeager. I have no knowledge of any of them. When the medics were there, did you make certain statements of the medics Like statements in the presence of them, not that I'm aware of. Recounting what had transpired before they arrived. Oh, you mean like laying on the stretcher? I said something, but I don't remember talking to anyone. All right, now, the medics you talked to at the hospital when you arrived at the hospital. There was a Coleman named Newman. You recall him? Only from his testimony. Did he testify at the Article 32? I believe he testified that he saw me. And at that time, he testified that he remember that he had seen you and given you an initial treatment that was given to you in the emergency room. No, I don't. Well, you remember when you arrived there, you were put in an emergency room? First thing I remember upon arrival to the hospital was a nurse asking me for my social security number. That's what I remember. Was that nurse in the admitting department? I don't know, sir. I was on a stretcher. She was demanding to know my social security number. Were you in the emergency room, or were you in the corridor leading the emergency room? I don't know. Did they take you to the emergency room? There were doctors there, and people running around, and they were starting an IV in my arm. I presume I was. You were talking to a what? Doctors. I thought you said something about IV. An IV, intravenous. Did you see Dr. Newman testify? Yes, I did. You don't recall having seen him that evening? No, I don't. Do you recall making any statement to a medic whether or not you recall the medic? No, sir. Dr. Jacobson? Yes, I remember talking to Dr. Jacobson. Was he the first doctor you saw? Honestly, I don't know. There are a lot of people, it seemed to me. Dr. Jacobson asked me some medical type questions, and I asked him, how are my wife and kids, but you don't want to know that. But I remember talking to him. Do you recall anything else that occurred that night in your house? No, sir. Dr. Straub? No. Do you remember talking to him? Not really. I think only because I reread his testimony. I don't remember. I can't picture myself there talking to anyone other than Jacobson. How about Dr. Gemma? Dr. Gemma, what I first remember is much later. I don't know, in hours. I'm talking about a later time. Was this prior to your subsequent time when they took you to the upstairs and inserted the tubes? I don't know who inserted the tubes. The first chest tube. I believe he inserted the second one. I'm not sure. The two were not inserted at the same time? No, they weren't. How much interval was there before these two surgical procedures? I don't know. From medical records, it was hours. It was a period of hours. But you don't recall yourself? No. Independently? Actually, the only clear recollection was of how much it hurt when he was putting in the second chest tube. How about Dr. Major Ryder? Dr. Ryder. I remember a visit sometime in the hospital. This is days later. Apparently he had visited me, but I wasn't aware. I don't remember that. You just don't recall it? Right. Well, as a matter of fact, you do recall making spontaneous statements. Yes, I do. To the doctors that came in contact with you during the first interval of the time that you remember that you were in the hospital? I remember saying some things right. You were there, not just there talking to them about the treatment they were giving you at that time, but you talked to them about what happened earlier that night in that house. Right. Now I remember on the morning of the 17th, after you'd been in the hospital for 2 or 3 hours after being visited by CID agents and FBI agents. You want my honest answer? I don't remember it. I know I was being questioned, but I don't remember when that was. You know it was on the 17th, but you don't know what time it was. It was shortly after something to do with the chest tubes, or one of the chest tubes. Right around the time there was someone talking to me. You remember who it was? No. You remember an agent named Connolly? A Paul Connolly? No, only from a statement that I've seen he made. Was there a statement? Was that statement a part of the Article 32 hearing? No, it was not. Do you remember talking to Lieutenant Joseph Polk at the house? Do you remember talking to Lieutenant Joseph Polk at the hospital? Lieutenant Polk? No, sir. Did Ron Harrison visit you in that morning in the hospital? Yes, I was under the impression it was later in the day. What time would you say later in the day? I don't know. Would it be sometime before lunch or after lunch? I was in intensive care. I didn't get lunch. I don't know. Later is a relative term. Can you tell me how much later? There was a constant stream. It seemed like to me my commanding officer. That's Colonel Kane? I believe it was. He came to visit? Right. And Ronald Harrison, who was a friend of yours at the time, came to visit you? Right. You remember there was an agent there named Connolly. Whether or not the name Connolly you remember, but you remember an agent coming there and talking to you, right? I remember someone asking me what sounded like more like an official questions he was asking about. Now, you remember an FBI agent named Cavalry? Yes, he's pretty hard not to forget. Do you remember coming there on the 17th? Not specifically. No, that's saying that I read his interview and reread it. That could serve to refresh your recollection now? Yes. But I remember talking to Mr. Cavalry on the 17th. I do remember talking to him on the 18th and 19th. Do you remember him when he was... Do you remember he was accompanied by someone when he came to see you, a gentleman named Hodges? There was someone with him on the last two interviews. I was not aware of the first. Now on the 17th in the early morning, I'm asking whether or not, in your personal knowledge, but do you know whether in fact your mother was notified or Mr. and Mrs. Cassab was notified? Right. Did they come to Fort Bragg? Right. Did they come on the 17th? Right. They visit you? Yes, they did. Did they inform you concerning the matter? Did you inform them concerning the matter? I did. Now, by the way, how long did they stay down there? I suppose they visited with you frequently over the period of time that you were in the hospital. And how long were you there? And they were there, right? And now, how long did they stay there? And your mother? I don't remember. My mother was there a significant length of time. A couple weeks, I think. The Kasabs, I don't remember. I don't. It would be a guess. You've already testified. You remember it being visited by an FBI agent, Cavalry? Yes. And the CID agent on the 18th and 19th? Right. Do you remember on the 19th there was a second FBI agent by the name of Crawford Williams? No, I did not. Now I assume between the 19th and 6th of April that you talked about this incident to a number of people. Other than those names I mentioned, no, sir. You didn't talk to anyone about it? I talked to about some people, but it was probably someone in reference to it with a Captain James Williams. I don't think you mentioned him. Can you tell us who he is? Is he a friend of yours? He visited me in the hospital also. He visited on the 17th? I think he did. And 18th and 19th? I don't remember that, sir. Depending on the closeness of your friendship and the interest of concern that he had, can you? But that's not the same thing as remembering. It seems logical that he would have been there every day for the next couple weeks. Yes. So you can say with some confidence that you saw him frequently during this time? Yes, But that isn't what you asked me. You asked me if I remember. That's true. I'm not sharpshooting you. You make a very good lawyer, Captain MacDonald. That isn't what my lawyers tell me. Well, between the 19th of February, the 19th and the February 19th and April 6th, that's the month of the March. That's a period between the 6 and 7 weeks. Can you inform us of the names and various sundry people that you talked to about this thing? I assume the newspaper men were trying to interview you. Whether you responded to those interviews or not, I don't know. I assume that persons who had personal acquaintance with you, friends of yours, and associates and so forth, were also speaking to you about it. And I'd like, as best you recall, the names of those various persons. Are you referring to in any comment to this, or are you talking about discussing it? No, which you could recount briefly. There's no response from Dr. MacDonald, or in detail, either one. The incidents that are covered by the various statements that you have made from time to time. It would only be some comments to Captain Harris. In detail, either one. The state incidents are covered by the various statements that you have made from time to time. Okay, it would be some comments to Captain Williams, probably some comments discussion type of Lieutenant Harrison, my mother. And I mean, people don't walk up to you and talk about it. The reason I'm asking you these questions is you pointed out that 4 years has elapsed, and that you've refreshed your recollection to a certain extent by re-examining certain documents that are available to you. And I'm trying to find out who you may have talked to who may have some fragments of this information that you recall at the time, and that you may not necessarily recall at this time. I would be helpful in developing and pursuing leads that will result in solving this case. Sure, an additional one, Captain Charles Probst. We have Williams, Harrison, your mother, Probst. Is that it? This is excluding comments other than, gee, I'm really sorry about what happened type thing, right? Now, on April 6th, you did go to the CID office, spend the morning there, and then the afternoon, and the thing has gone over in detail at that time. I went there several times before April 6th, and they didn't want to talk to me. I'd like to make it very clear. April 6th was the first long interview I had with the CID. That is correct. Do you recall when you went there on previous occasions? You mean the dates? Yes, approximately. No. Were they close to April 6th or close to the 19th of February? I talked to Grebner, who's the chief of the CID investigators, by phone many times, and was re-fingerprinted because they told me they lost fingerprints twice. And I was footprinted 2 or 3 times because they said they lost them. And I was at the office, and I would say, without exaggerating, I would say 2 or 3 times, aside from the phone calls. Do you follow me? In other words, I called several times. In addition, there were also several visits, 2 or 3 visits. But on these occasions, they didn't explore the matter in depth. That was just sort of casual conversation relating to the talking and the footprints and the taking of the footprints and other examinations. Correct. One, there was another visit to the CID office wherein I went to the CID office to pick up my wallet that had been stolen from the crime scene by an ambulance driver. I don't have the information to that regard. 9 months after the fact, Mr. Grebner said he had no idea who took it. Now, when you contacted the CID office in the interval between the 19th of February and April 6th, who was the individual you contacted? Was always Mr. Grebner. You mean by telephone? Either by phone or by personal visit to the office? I don't remember. Only because I think I recognized him when he was walked in and he testified. Benny Hawkins, who I think one of the prior visits was handled by him. And you can tell us who Benny Hawkins is? And can you tell us who Benny Hawkins is? He's allegedly a CID investigator. Now, on April 7th, you contacted a JAG attorney. Is that correct? That's correct. And was that Lieutenant Dowsett? I think it was Captain Dowsett. Captain Dowsett. The reason that you contacted him at the time was because I would say there was a double reason. One is you were requested to cooperate and submit to a polygraph examination. The second one was accusatory statements that had been made to you by the CID agents. That's right. I'm not asking you what you said to. I'm not asking what you said to Captain Dowsett, but I am going to ask why you went to see him. I didn't go to see him specifically. Captain Williams, my medical corps service officer, when I went back to the office on April 6th in the late afternoon after the interview, I called him into my office and I said, I told him, Jim, the CID just questioned me for 6 hours, and he said, I wonder when they'd get around to doing that. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, the rumor is you've been followed for weeks. So I said, thanks for telling me. And he said, look, you're my friend, you just lost your family, and you don't need to know that we're trailing you around. Big deal. And I said, they finished the investigation by asking me if I would take a polygraph. And I said I would. What do you mean that you said you would? And I told them I'd take a polygraph. And I said, get your goddamn polygraph expert and let's do it. Or something to that effect. And he said, you've got to be crazy. And I said, what do you mean crazy? And he said, you're going to let them Army give you a polygraph in the homicide of your family? Or words to that effect. And I said, yes, that Mr. Shaw or Mr. Ivory or one of them stated that if I passed the polygraph, they'd wash their hands of this matter and wish me bon voyage and I could be on my way to Vietnam, something like that, words to that effect. If I didn't pass, they'd proceed with the investigation. He said to me, I don't want to get into this, but if I were you, I'd get a lawyer. And I said, I don't need a lawyer, I need my family back. So at that time the phone rang and it was my commanding officer, Colonel Kane. He said, perhaps you and Captain Williams should come over to my office. And there's something I want to tell you. So the two of us went over there to his office, the Public Information Office of Fort Bragg, and they said they're going to issue a statement that you're the primary suspect in a homicide. And I said, oh, that's just great. That's just really terrific. Public Information Office is going to hold a conference and state that I'm the primary suspect in the homicide of my family. And I said, that's just terrific. He said, in conjunction, I've been asked to restrict you to your quarters and put you under, I've forgotten what they call it, house arrest, essentially. So, Captain Williams, you're hereby detailed to be Captain MacDonald's escort officer. You will see that he does not leave this room except for meals and the PX or something to that like that. And we left. And on my way back to my quarters, I told him, and on my way back to my quarters, he said, you need a lawyer. And Colonel Kane, before I left, before I left, I said, I would advise you strongly that you are in need of military assistance. You're recounting the incident that occurred on the evening of the 6th of April? I think so. Have you spoke with the CID agents? That's correct. Now, the following morning, did you proceed to the JAG office? No, I attempted to, but I was intercepted by the CID. They said that Mr. Grebner wants to see you, and I said, I don't want to see him. Well, we had direct orders that you have to come to the CID office. And I said, well, Captain Williams' orders are to escort me to my room, and I'm allowed to go to the PX. I'm not allowed by Colonel Kane's orders to go to the CID office. And I don't remember whether Captain Williams was with me or not. But at this point, it was about 7:30 in the morning. But in essence, what happened was the two CID agents took my arms and escorted me to the car, and I arrived at Mr. Grabner's office shortly thereafter. And he said, "Now do you wish to take a polygraph?" And I said, "No, I don't wish to take a polygraph. I wish to see a lawyer." At which time he shook, his hands were shaking, he spilled his coffee all over his hands. Probably would have wet himself being in the presence of such a great athlete as myself. "Did you proceed to the JAG office? I'm trying to get you to the JAG office one way or another." "Yes, I did. I went over to the JAG office with Captain Williams, and I think it was Captain Williams, I don't remember. During this time, my mother had retained counsel, Bernard Siegel, and I didn't know this. They called me at the BOQ where I was living, and the MP guard outside my door stated that I was not to receive phone calls, and hung up, so I didn't know that I had this phone call with private counsel coming. So I went over to the JAG office, I walked in, and I said, "I'm Captain MacDonald, and I would like to see about getting a military lawyer. There are some matters that are apparently going to have to be cleared up." And I was ushered in the office of Major Wold. And Major Wold, I said just the same exact thing. "Captain MacDonald, and I'd like to request a lawyer." And he said something like, "Are you requesting the presence of military counsel?" I said, "It's perfectly apparent from what I just said, I want a lawyer." So he said, "We have the man for you." And he brought me into another office, at which time I met Captain Dowsett. And Captain Dowsett then became your counsel. And then Captain Dowsett became your military counsel. Yes, he did. Now, at this time, I'm not asking you when you said again, but I'm asking you, did you ever have a discussion with you in which you recounted your observations and your recollections and actions on the night of the 16th and 17th of February? Mr. Woerheide, I'm honestly not sure if I'm supposed to answer that, only because allegedly, I'm not asking you what you said. I know, I understand, but allegedly attorney-client relationship are not to be discussed. If you will, the answer to that question is, I don't think at that time there was any real discussion of the events of the 17th of February. That came at a later date, right? How soon after did you get in contact with Mr. Siegel? I don't know. I don't know if it was later that day. I think later that day, either Captain Dowsett got a call or something. I wasn't allowed to have a phone call for a period of days. The MP apparently had orders not to allow calls through, and wasn't aware that counsel was supposed to be allowed to talk to me. I think it was Tuesday afternoon, April 7th. That was the first contact that was made, that I was aware of, that I had civilian counsel. You say Mr. Siegel was retained by your mother. That's who made the initial phone call. That actual down payment of money was placed by Bob Stern. Did Mr. Stern initially contact Mr. Siegel on your behalf? I guess he did. Did your mother have any prior knowledge of the acquaintanceship with Mr. Siegel? As a matter of fact, Bob Stern told my mother about Mr. Siegel. And when this matter came up, you were always in this difficult situation at the time. And it was apparent you needed a lawyer to give you assistance with respect to these problems. Bob Stern, on your behalf, contacted Mr. Siegel. And he and your mother were also in contact with another. And your mother was in contact with Mr. Siegel, right? Right. Did you agree that Mr. Siegel to accept Mr. Siegel as your attorney as of this phone call conversation you had with him on the 7th of April? That's correct. How soon after did you see Mr. Siegel? I don't know, I believe it was about a week later, sure. Where was that, Fort Bragg or in Philadelphia? Fort Bragg. Did he come alone? No, he came with an associate, Dennis Eisman. Do you remember how long you stayed there at that time? Most of the day, I believe. Was this your first opportunity to discuss the matter at length with Mr. Siegel and Mr. Eisman? Once again, I'm not going to ask what you said to them or what they said to you, but I'm going to ask you generally. Did you discuss in detail your recollection observations on the actions on the night of the 16th, 17th of February? Non detail, no. So just like a general outline, it was a special blow-by-blow account, so to speak. It was much more of a general type thing. Then they came down there about a week later, you say. So that would be placed somewhere around the 14th of April. In the meantime, had you found the opportunity to discuss the matter with Mr. Dowsett, or was that reserved until the time Mr. Siegel came down? I was in communication with Captain Dowsett. Constantly? No, not constantly. Intermittently? Intermittently. In that weekly interval? Right. And going on over the facts of the case, that he would have some knowledge of the situation, right? No, that's not exactly what was happening. Again, I'm not asking you, what you said, but what was happening. He gave me a letter, like a legal pad, like you're writing on, and he told me to write down whatever I remembered and whenever I remembered it. If you wake up in the middle of the night and remember something, write it down, and this went on for about a month. And you did that. That's correct. Now, you did that both for Captain Dowsett and Mr. Siegel, not separately. In other words, you just compiled in a way of information that was given to you by both of them jointly for the use in your counsel. Is that it? Effectively, yes. Do you remember how long this statement was, or this compilation of data, this narrative? No. Was it sort of a legal pad you're using? Yes. Have you seen that statement lately? I've seen it. I haven't read it. Can you tell us who has possession or control of it? My attorneys. Do you know any reason why that shouldn't be shown or made available to the grand jury? Is there anything in there that might be harmful or detrimental to yourself that is being used against you and helpful to the grand jury conduct this investigation? I doubt it. It would reflect severely upon the CID. My question I'm asking you is to give us the answer at this time, but I'm asking you to consult with your attorney and give us the answer when you come back from before the grand jury at a later time. I'm not asking you to consult with them at this moment. We can do it tomorrow. But I'm going to request that you make it available to us for the benefit of the grand jury conducting its intensive and exhaustive investigation in this matter. The notes that you have compiled back in April, possibly May, or for the information of Captain Dowsett, Mr. Siegel, and Mr. Eisman. With its irrelevancies and meaningless comments? Yes. As I understand it, that's an attorney-client product. It is privileged, and you're at liberty to refuse to make them available to them. The statement itself has nothing in it except what I recollect. I'm telling you, it's privileged communication with your counsel. This is a privilege that is personal to you. You can, if you wish, waive the privilege and make the information available to the grand jury. Mr. Woerheide, are you setting me up to be the fall guy? No, I'm not. I got instructions from an attorney that gets $500 a day. And he says you will not ever divulge attorney-client relationships. And I'm here divulging them. I've not asked you. I've not asked you question one. I understand that. As to any privileged statement you made to him, or in any privileged statement that you made to him, privileged statement that he made to you. The implication is, but I'm asking you to consult with him and give us an answer as to whether or not you're willing to give us this statement, either in whole or in part. If you wish to Xerox it or excise portions of it, you are free to do so. And I'm going to ask you to consider and respond to this request that you make this material available to the grand jury. That's fair. The only problem is the unfairness is if I respond in a negative fashion through an attorney. Well, we'll be aware that you're doing this on the advice of your counsel, and it might not be necessary to agree with the answer, but it is your decision, not the council's decision, and you can accept the advice or you can reject this advice. That's up to you. When did Mr. Malley enter? He wrote something to me during this juncture. He was in the Army. Where was he stationed? Somewhere around Texas, El Paso, or whatever base is out there near El Paso. Is he one of your friends of yours? Yes, we were college roommates. That's at Princeton. Yes. Was that during your freshman year or before you were married? Freshman and sophomore. Alright, once again, I'm not asking you for any privileged communications, but I want to know about your engagement of Mr. Malley and how you became involved in this. He wrote me a letter to me expressed dismay at the turn of events and wanted to make sure I was obtaining civilian counsel because he told me that the military counsel have a problem because if the prosecutor is a colonel or major and the defense is a captain, there's a difference. There's not supposed to be, but in fact there is. And he said, you better make sure you have a civilian counsel. It makes a difference. And I don't remember what transpired next. I think he was on leave, and he came to see me, and Captain Dowsett had already mentioned he was going to tell you need help. I don't really know how it came up, but it came up. And we were sitting around, and I said, well, how about Mike Malley? He graduated very high in Harvard Law, and he was acting as a trial lawyer for the Army anyway, and I said, why not get him? And it was someone we know and trust and wouldn't pass information to the prosecution as another was. So, to make a long story short, he applied for orders. He attached to Fort Bragg for the duration of the Article 32 trial as my counsel and assistant trial counsel. I don't know if that's correct law word, but the orders were granted. He became part of the council. And how long prior to the communication at the Article 32 did he arrive at Fort Bragg? Well, when did the Article 32 hearing commence? Well, if you mean literally or allegedly, it commenced like in June 1st. Not the Article 32, but the orders were formal or something like that. It's a charging ceremony where my commanding officer had to read the charges. I had counsel present and whatnot, and was adjourned until July. Did it ever come prior to that date? He was there for some period of time, but it was leave time. It wasn't on orders. He was using his leave time. Do you recall when you took some leave the first time and he came to visit you, approximately? No, sometime. It would be sometime around May, wouldn't it? Yes, sometime around May. I think he was there for a while in June, and he was there for the Article 32 until September when he got orders to Vietnam. When was it you went to Philadelphia? I would say late April, maybe early May. It must have been late April. It was late April because Mr. Siegel wanted to go further over my recollections and begin essentially preparing for the defense, I guess. Did Captain Dowsett accompany to Philadelphia? Yes, he did. Anyone else? No, I don't think so. Now, when you went up there, you were informed in advance that they would employ a psychiatrist to make an examination of you. That who they employ? Were you informed in advance by Mr. Siegel or anyone else that they would employ a psychiatrist or a forensic psychiatrist? No, they didn't. To make an examination of you? Lawyers like to spring things. There are about 3 seconds to go, and they tell you things, so I really don't know until I got there. Did they ask you to agree with this? Sir, I really think we're treading on the communications between the lawyer and the client. Well, I ask you this. Did you agree with it? Did I have a psychiatric? Well, I know you had a psychiatric examination. I know Dr. Sadoff testified at the Article 32 hearing of his examination of you. Yes, I agreed to a psychiatric examination. Ask you this, did you have any reluctance to agree to it? Sure, I had reluctance to agree to it. Who wants to lay on a couch for 3 or 4 hours and talk to a psychiatrist? Especially in an emotional state that I was in at the time. As a matter of fact, my defense attorneys sometimes don't have much feelings. As a matter of fact, Mr. Siegel said, we have to look into your sanity. We have to see if it's conceivable, no matter what the evidence show, what's in your life, who you are, and what you're capable of. Do you recall the approximate day that this psychiatric examination was performed? I assume it extended over several days. I don't know the dates. Now, besides dating Dr. Self, did you see a psychologist who gave you certain tests? I did, but I think we're going to stop talking about this. Attorney-client relationships, right? I'm not asking what you said to him. Yes, you are. I'm not asking you what the psychologist said to you. I'm just asking, you were examined by a psychologist who gave you certain tests. Yes, and all the results forwarded to the Army. The Army had it all for their psychiatric examination. Now, when you say all the results, what are you referred to? The results of the examinations that I had in Philadelphia. Was that some sort of report or document or a series of documents? I presume a series of documents. There's a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Have you ever seen any of the documents? Just summaries by my lawyers. When were you sent to Walter Reed? At the end of the Article 32 hearing in August of 1970. Was the testimony still being taken at that time? I believe when we returned it had effectively been closed, and when we returned there were rebuttal witnesses or something. There are a few more witnesses when we came back. I think the effective testimony, prosecution, defense had been finished. How long did you stay in Washington? At least a week. How many people examined you? 3 psychiatrists. Was there any further tests done there by a psychologist? I don't remember. I had some kind of electroscintigram, whatever you want to call it, brainwaves. I don't know. I don't think there was any. You mean like the Minnesota multiphasic personality test type? Yes, and the Rorschach test? No. That sort of thing? No, I don't think so. Tests that were of that type that were made in Philadelphia by a psychologist there? That's right. The results of those tests were available to the psychiatrist at Walter Reed Hospital. The psychiatrist at Walter Reed wanted to review those to see if they had to redo them, and they said they didn't need to do their own tests. I think that's how it worked out. They found the results, and they said they didn't need to repeat them. And neither the Philadelphia nor Walter Reed were you given a sodium enamol test. You explained previously that because it required you to relive the incident, and it wasn't done in either place, I take it? Right. How long did you spend with Dr. Sadoff as distinguished from the psychologist? I don't remember. Do you recall? Honestly, I don't remember. Was it part of one day or more than one day? Oh, it was more. How many more days? I don't remember. I don't know. I would guess. Could have been more than 3 days. I would say that it was 2 or 3. The Army, I believe their test was 5. As I recall, you said that these tests were made by Dr. Sadov probably at the end of April, beginning of May possibly, and I think you said at the end of April the Walter Reed test or examination was made in August. Now, I believe in those intervals, did you talk to anyone, not a lawyer, psychiatrist, or psychologist, concerning the incident on the February the 16th or 17th? No, no one except reporters. They were the reporters. I really don't remember, sir. There were hundreds of them, they were all over the place. Did you give full description of the matter of any of those to those reporters? I gave a long statement to one of the reporters. Now, what was his name? John Cummings. And he was a reporter with Newsday. And where'd you give the statement? Fort Bragg. Was this in your quarters at Fort Bragg? No, it was in a room at the Article 32 building. Was anyone else present there besides you and Mr. Cummings? I don't remember. Was this done with the knowledge of the attorneys? Certainly. How long did you give the statement to John Cummings? I don't remember. Was the tape recorded? I believe it was. Was it published? It was. Was it serialized Newsday? A period over time? 2 days. I would take it this was a voluntary statement that you made? Yes. Was the entire interview published or only excerpts from it? I don't remember. Will you furnish a copy of the tape interview? No. Do you have any objection to us obtaining from John Cummings or a copy of the tape or of the interview? You'll have to talk to Mr. Cummings. It's not my property. Would you personally have any objection to it? Only that has been my experience with government prosecutors in the past that it has not been good. And you would have to review the tape with the understanding that it was a statement made to a reporter. It was not the same thing as I understand you're not on oath. Isn't that? This was a duty for me, to sort of equalize all the bad things my family had to read up in Long Island. And the stuff I had in the Casabs at that time, my in-laws. Well, let me ask you this. Is there anything that you said in that statement you'd feel you want to retract this time? I'd have to reread it. I'll get you a copy of the statement and I'll give it to you. I'll afford you an opportunity to reread it tonight. I'd like to know. Sir, in other words, what you're saying is that you're viewing the statement as a statement of fact from me. Otherwise, you wouldn't be interested in it. Well, it's a statement by you recounting your recollections of the events of February 16th and 17th, and some events that took place slightly before that time. For example, the 24 hours you spent working at Hammond Hospital, conversation that you had with Ron Harris in your quarters on the Saturday preceding. And, this wasn't even really with thought. This was just talking to the reporter. And if there wasn't an answer to the question, you'd tell them you'd be vaguely correct. It's not like you tell us. I'd like you to examine the statement and actually tell us we have a copy of the statement as it is printed. I should turn this thing around, Do you want me to bring in Colonel Korenick's news clippings, what he said to the press? We're not interested in what Colonel Korenick said. Well, you should be. I'm interested in what you as a witness have acknowledged certain facts had to say. But the newspaper is not facts. That's the thing. And this interview sort of was arranged by a high-powered defense attorney who wanted sort of a story told publicly, If I had it my way, I wouldn't have even given the interview. That's not a legitimate thing to me. Well, this statement made for you by the benefit of anybody who chooses to read the statement, and the statement is attributed directly to you. Sir, I think there's a much fuller, better account of this in the Article 32 investigation, taken under oath. But this was prior to Article 32. You're not under any pressure. You're not under any strain. I beg to differ. It was done voluntarily and purports to convey the same territory. To imply I wasn't any pressure at that time in my life is outrageous. It was under tremendous. Did Mr. Cummins put you under pressure? The interview to me was, well, yeah, he did. Was it tense? Yes, I was tense, Mr. Woerheide. You think you said anything that you shouldn't have said? I don't know. I'd have to reread it. I don't reread newspaper clippings. I'll get a copy of it before we close today and afford you the opportunity to reread it, and we'll discuss it further tomorrow. Did you give any comparable statements to any other reporter or to any other interviewer? Not that I'm aware of, and that means no. Now, we have covered all the statements that you have given that you can recall between the February 17th, December 4th, to anybody that we might obtain for the purpose of seeking leads, helpful to information that might resolve this matter. I can't think of any other long formal type statements or interviews that we haven't mentioned. Alright, we come to December 4th. Do you remember after December 4th, you made a number of statements, not about the incident of the 16th and 17th of February, but about the conduct of the investigation and the Article 32 proceedings. Oh, I sure did. Well, I'd like to ask a preliminary question before I get into this. Did you consider your counsel or anyone else for your benefit on your behalf employ any private investigation in connection with the Article 13 proceedings? Yes, I'm sure that occurred at some point. Can you tell us who you employed and who they were? No. What knowledge do you have of the fact that there were certain private investigators employed? Just conversations with my attorneys. The attorneys employ private investigators? You'll have to ask them. What? You'll have to ask them, Mr. Woerheide. Did you have any voluntary investigators act on your behalf? Yes. Who are they? I don't know. Were there any investigative reports submitted which you saw? You mean like formal investigative reports, like a detective? Formal or informal? I never saw any. No. To your knowledge, did any attorneys ever receive any investigative reports of any nature, formal or informal? I don't know, honestly. Well, did anyone tell you information that had been supplied by any individuals? Certainly. That might be helpful to you? Certainly. Who told you that? Sir, we have hundreds of pieces of information supplied to us constantly, every day. That's what I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to ascertain the identity of individuals who felt that they were in a position to furnish useful information in this matter. Useful information that might help us resolve this matter. That was the subject of the Article 32 proceeding. I want to pursue any investigative leads that we can come up with. Sure, what's the question? The question that you were told. You said you didn't see any documentation, but what you were told, if anything, about such information that had been volunteered and submitted by, what I'm aware of is mainly verbal communications from reporters. Our comments about investigators. I don't know if in fact there are paid investigators retained. We received a lot of things in the mail without ever knowing who sent it to us. We received copies. Did you keep those things and retain those things? Certainly. Usually it was just something to do with what the Army was trying to hide. What'd you do with it? Do you still have it? Yes, sir. Will you make it available? It depends. I'm requesting that you make it available. Some things I will not make available. I'm requesting you make it available to us. What you're willing to make available to us. I'll have to discuss it with Mr. Siegel, sir. If it's germane and relevant, absolutely. That's what I'm here for. You know what we're talking about. You said to me, you said some of it you would not make available. What will you make available to us? Well, for instance, when my lawyers were assaulted by the MPs, and the CID, there were photographs available. There were photographs available of my attorney flying through the air, landing on his head. The official FBI report stated my lawyer wrenched himself violently to one side, threw himself to the ground, and knocked himself out. That was witnessed by 4 newsmen and a Lieutenant Spain from Public Information Office. And the FBI and CID investigation concludes that it was staged by my attorneys. When my car was surrounded by 4 MP cars, an Army MP in a car pulled up behind us and pulled out of the car and knocked my lawyers to the ground, took me to my room, and took hair samples. The FBI report states, and I repeat it, states that it was staged by my attorneys. I will not give those pictures of that to anyone. No, the FBI had been trying to get them for 4 years. That's what I will not give you. If you want to give it to us, that's a privilege. That's right. And it's the kind of investigation we're talking about. I'm asking you to make them available for the benefit of this grand jury for any specific information that doesn't have any relationship that you will have in your possession that you might throw some light on. I'll discuss that with Mr. Siegel, and if there's something relevant that is, sure, I will. But, I'll have to discuss it with Mr. Siegel. I am not aware of formal statements written or from paid or volunteer investigators. No. Alright, sir, I have the Newsday article that was published on the 20th of December 1930. Headline is, Beret Freed, Family Deaths. And it says in part, MacDonald and his attorneys expect to conduct their own investigation. The Army never followed up on some of the leads that we turned up. MacDonald said, I plan to do a lot of right investigating. Now, did you turn over to the military any leads resulting from your investigation? Yes. Will you be specific? What I'm specifically referring to is testimony in reference to a female individual and males in Fayetteville that testified in an Article 32 hearing. That one brought up apparently to the CID notice by us. We lucked out on this information purely by what my attorneys tell me, absolute chance. And then it was turned over on multiple occasions, and we have sworn testimony that it was allegedly reinvestigated. I'm sure you're familiar with that testimony. All right, now, that's one item. Now, tell me about the other leads you turned up. Well, when I left the Army, sir, I asked for a civilian, not an Army investigation. It became apparent at this time an Army investigation of the Army was a little ludicrous. I went to the Justice Department in December, banged on a desk, and they refused to interview me. I had a congressman with me, okay? They wouldn't even talk to me. They wouldn't even give me the courtesy of saying hello. It was by phone from down the hall. They rejected any information we could give them. You went to the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., huh? That's correct. It was a congressman, Congressman Howard Lowenstein. You remember the date? No, I don't. It was in December. Do you remember who went with you to the Justice Department? Well, do you remember who went in the Justice Department with you? No, I'm sure it's logged in, though. Did you go to the Criminal Division? Yes, we did. Did you go to the office of the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Criminal Division? I'm sure that's where it was. Whom did you see there? I don't know. Will Wilson pops in mind? I don't know if that's correct. Will Wilson's the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Criminal Division. Did you see him? I believe we talked on the phone to him, or I talked to him on the phone. Now, Henry Patterson was then the first assistant to Will Wilson. Did you see him? Okay, the first phone call was from the lobby and was to Mr. Wilson. He referred me to, I guess it was Mr. Peterson, wasn't it? I believe it was either that order or vice versa. And both of them categorically refused to even discuss the case with me absolutely refused categorically to discuss anything about the case with me. All right, where'd you go then? I don't remember. Did you go to the office of a Mr. Belcher? I don't remember a Mr. Belcher. Did they refer you to the FBI? I don't think they referred to us to the FBI. We had already seen letters from the FBI, the state police, the Fayetteville police, the State Bureau of Investigation, and the Justice Department refusing the responsibility in the case. None of them would reinvestigate the case. I had already seen the letters, and it seemed a little futile. Said you banged on a desk. Whose desk did you bang on? I honestly don't know. It was a secretary type desk. Now, you're carrying information with you at that time to turn over to the Department of Justice, and the information and leads that you had turned up as a result of your investigation. I don't remember. I think it was sort of information sheet that I put together for that purpose. Lieutenant Malley's letter, who is now in Vietnam. Do you have a copy of that information sheet? I believe I do. Do you have a copy of Lieutenant Malley's letter? Right. Will you make those available to the grand jury? Surely. All right, I'll have to quote further from this article. We hope to get either the appropriate civilian agency or to get our own investigators so we can find the real killers. Did you hire your own investigators? I never hired investigators. No, my lawyers cost me $30,000 up to that point. My mother had to sell her house to pay for it. Plus, I was trying to rebuild a life, and it became a little bizarre. And I didn't. I just didn't at that time. I was busy and dead, and that's one of my great sins, apparently. It says both attorneys criticized Army investigators for their methods of obtaining evidence against MacDonald. That's a very general allegation. What are the specifics behind it? For obtaining evidence? Their methods of obtaining evidence against MacDonald. I'm sure they're referring to the crime scene back on the 17th of February. I'm sure in their mind they're referring to the way that they have finally achieved their desired goal of getting hair samples. I'd like to state to you, sir, that you may or may not know that I have never refused hair samples. All I said to the Army was I requested an order from my commanding officer. I was a good Army officer, by the way. All I ever said to them was tell Colonel Kane to give me an order and I'll give him the hair samples. And they didn't, so they ran our car off the road, and that's how they got their hair samples. There was never a refusal. There was never a motion filed in any federal court by my attorneys to the taking of hair samples. Yeah, I vehemently opposed, but the point was when the federal court denied that they didn't have the jurisdiction, I left it hanging because that means no one has jurisdiction or something like that. And I told them I would give them a hair sample if Colonel Kane would issue a direct order for me to do so. I was still on active duty. The orders that I followed were by my commanding officer. He is the one who signaled the orders about who would visit me, where I could go, and what I could eat, and everything I could do. Well, he didn't get the order. Well, he didn't order you to not to give the hair samples. That isn't the point. I just asked him that he be informed of this, and if he agreed and ordered me to submit the CID investigators and laboratory technician, I would be willing to do so, and that's what happened. Let's go back to the Newsday article. It said Siegel and yesterday, Captain MacDonald, and I want to express our thanks to Representative Otis Pike, Democrat Riverhead, and Senator Charles Goodell, Republican New York, for their very great help in this matter. Both men worked with us and with officials in the Pentagon to see that MacDonald's rights, and apparently at the bottom page, last line on the page, was omitted, but I assume it was something like the safeguard or preserved or honored or something to that effect. Now, tell us about what Mr. Otis Pike's role and Senator Goodell's role was. ex-Senator Goodell, ex-Congressman Lowenstein. I don't know if Pike's still in. It doesn't make any reference to Lowenstein here. I believe most of this was in reference to two things. One was the assault on my lawyers, the alleged assaults on my lawyers, which in fact occurred, and by obviously now can't be proven because the FBI said it didn't occur. That was one reason that was argued very vehemently by members of Congress. They had seen on television. It was hard to argue that was one reason they were interested in the case. They were also interested in, they speeded up my process of getting out of the Army in November. Really, so I got out before December. I don't even know if they made inquiries in the Article 32 hearing to the Department of Army in reference to the hearing. I think there was a lot of communication going on at that time, like Senator Javits, Senator Sam Ervin. A lot of them were aware of this case and gotten letters. I take it nothing was submitted to them at the time that might be helpful to the grand jury at this time. Not that I'm aware of. Now, the next article I've dated is October 29, 1970. It's from the Raleigh, North Carolina newspapers. Just two items. You said you were over 30,000 in the hole. This quotes you saying I'm also 20,000 in debt to my lawyers without being guilty. How do you go from 20,000 to 30,000? The figures don't mean much. Mr. Woerheide, we were talking about $10,000 means something to me, does it? 4 months, and everything, all expenses were paid. There were motels and phone bills. It went on, and essentially most of this was absorbed by my mother, you know. The article further states he talked about revenge against killers. He said his wife, Colette, children Kirsten and Kimberly, I'd like to get these people. I can't understand why the Army won't try harder now. What does that mean, term revenge? It's pretty self-evident. You could probably come to the point more directly, Mr. Woerheide. What you're leading up to, what we'll get into shortly, but at this point, it'd be nice if the perpetrators were caught. Were you supposed to seek out the perpetrators? Only in an ineffectual manner. That's not being very definitive. Now, be explicit. It was at the same time as this, when you went into some bars to talk to people. I tried to track down Helena Stokely. It just isn't like Kojak. Bud, it doesn't work that way. But you were making an effort, yes. On your own, yes. But I'm talking about it's a very difficult time for me to walk into a bar in Fayetteville and play undercover agent. This thing had been on the front pages for 6 months. Well, you had friends that were helping you, right? Not specifically, no. Were they helping you in a non-specific way? Yes, my lawyers still got leads. We still got phone calls. We had things like that. Nothing great, no. Well, when you went into these bars around Fayetteville, and I've been to Fayetteville, I've seen from the outside of the street with a few bars on it. I know the type of locale that you're talking about. Were you alone? Did you have someone with you? I believe I was usually alone. I probably had some friends with me occasionally. Were you looking for the people who might be the perpetrators you described? Right. Let me quote a little bit further. If the killers were caught, tried, and found guilty and sentenced to death, how would he feel? He was asked. I think it'd be fine, the death sentence. They made their decision when they killed my family. They should pay for it. The captain said that he had a few leads, but he didn't want to elaborate on them. Now, is this a reference to the investigation that you were making at the time? Yes. What leads you have? Mr. Woerheide, I can't come in here 4 years later and make it sound like I was some sort of avenging hero going through Fayetteville. That's not what happened. I went to bars. I questioned people. I asked them things. There was, probably an occasional little bit of pushing matches. This isn't a big deal, this thing. Well, what do you mean by pushing matches? Well, I would get upset, with some doper. And then what would happen? Usually nothing. When something did happen, what would happen? You mean you want me to recount every little fist fight? Is that what you want? If you recall, yes. When I say every little fight, now how many were there? I mean, a couple. I was a very visible person in the community at that time. I could walk in a bar and 50 people would stop and say, "Hey, that's Captain MacDonald." You know, you don't really get much information that way unless someone wants to come up to you and give information. How does a situation develop that result in a fist fight? I was sitting in a bar in Fayetteville. I was watching these kids buy little bags of pills right out in the open. They weren't even making the attempt to hide it. So I went over and sat down next to them. On reflection, it's really stupid. What happened to them? I asked them some questions about Helena Stokely, which is what I was essentially doing at the time. What happened then? People would either say, at this particular time, what happened then? They would say, the guy said to me, it's none of your business. And what happened then? I said, the hell it isn't my business. And I kicked his chair out. And there was a little scuffling. How this thing ended up? Yes. You leave before the MPs get there. This happened several times? Yes. At that time they took a recess and returned. And when they returned, Mr. Woerheide returned to questioning. Let's get back to this. Mr. Foreman, Brother Ragged, Dr. MacDonald's had me the foreman a document, and I'm going to ask our reporter to mark it as a MacDonald Exhibit 2 on this date. Dr. MacDonald, did you prepare this statement? It's prepared by my attorneys. And they prepare it for you? That's correct. And this is communication to them by the grand jury, right? That's correct. Have you seen the communication? Yes, I have. All right. I'll read this off. We have just been advised by Dr. MacDonald concerning the most serious matter of the attempts by the government attorneys to question and obtain information from MacDonald about the matters concerning the attorney-client privilege, despite the denial by the government's attorney that he was attempting to invade the privacy of these discussions. It is perfectly clear, relied upon the secrecy of their proceedings. He has conducted nearly 1 hour question in this area, and we must respectfully call to your attention that matters which the government cannot legitimately pry into. The government knows and realizes this very memorandum to you will be embarrassing to Dr. MacDonald. The government knows that some persons may view our objections to the area questioning as keeping evidence from the grand jury. This is absolutely untrue, but it is unfortunate the effect of the procedure being followed by the government's attorneys. We therefore request to you that A, direct the government's attorneys, and it's your absolutely right to do so, to refrain from any direct and indirect attempts to question Dr. MacDonald about his discussions with his attorneys and those assisting in him or in the alternative. B, request that Judge Dupree give you further instructions in the regard of your duties in that matter. This is signed Bernard L. Siegel, Michael J. Malley, and is initialed by them, and it says underneath, attorneys for Dr. MacDonald. I might say, Dr. MacDonald, that you may inform the attorneys that as of this time they are not witnesses before the grand jury, and it is not their function or duty to advise or give legal advice to the grand jury, and this is my responsibility and function, that Tom McNamara, the United States Attorney, and Mr. Stroud, the Assistant U.S. Attorney, now if You have any further statements to make? They will make it to us. Make it to us as the counsel for the grand jury, and I ask you to tell them that they should cease and desist from any such memorandums. And I'm going to tell you this, that I will afford them an opportunity to appear before the grand jury, not as attorneys, giving legal advice, but to the grand jury, but as witnesses who would be able to provide some useful information to the grand jury. Do you understand what I said? I couldn't miss it, sir. There seems to be some discrepancy, sir, between what different attorneys say between the attorney-client, and that's attorney-client privilege, you know. I'm not going to get into controversy. I'm not going to get into controversy with you at this time. MacDonald, what period of time did you engage in investigative activity that you referred to? I don't specifically remember. It was a period off, I guess, weeks to months. I don't remember specific dates. Tell us when you initially gave up on it. When I was released from custody. When was that? In October 1970. Alright, you remained in this area through the 4th of December, I take it. Right. Thereafter, you went to live around the area of Long Island, is that correct? Right. Did you continue that activity while you were there? No, I did not. Subsequently, you moved to California? Correct. Did you continue the activity while you were there? No. Did you remain in contact and communication with Mr. Siegel, Mr. Eisman, Mr. Malley after the Article 32 was concluded? Surely. How long did that continue? Up to the present, except for Mr. Eisman. Well, there's been a lapse of several years now. Last year, how many times did you see Mr. Siegel? I don't remember. Did you see him at all? I saw him. I don't know if it was I don't know if it was late last year or early this year. I saw him. Was it a social visit? Not really. Anything to do with this? Did it have anything to do with this case? Yes, it did. I'm not going to ask you for any confidential communication that you were made to him or that he made to you seeking legal advice. Let me ask this. Did you seek legal advice? Surely. Did you seek legal advice with respect to the CID investigation in 1970 and the court-martial of the Article 32 proceeding in 1970? That would come under communication there. No, I'm not asking you what you said to him. I'm trying to fix the topic. The major topic that we talked about, if you're going to press me, is Mr. McNamara had a press conference, or he had a press release actually, regarding the convening a grand jury 6 months ago. I'm not going to go into any details and ask you for what you said to him and what he said to you. Trying to ascertain the subject of the conversation now. That was either late 1973 or early 1974. I really don't remember, Mr. Woerheide. I honestly don't remember. Now let's go ahead to 1972. Did you have communication with him then? It was infrequent communication. Well, was this just social, an exchange of a postcard or a letter or a visit, or was it attorney-client relationship? That's between he and I. Did you pay legal fees in 1972? That's not a confidential communication. Yes, that's part of our work. Did you pay any legal fees in 73 or 74? That's still part of our work, it seems to me. I refuse to answer my questions. You really have a way of trapping people, Mr. Woerheide. I've been given instructions not to discuss the attorney-client relationship. That is obviously attorney-client relationship questions you're asking. As counsel for the grand jury, I will tell you what is covered by the attorney-client privilege. Sir, I've already been lectured by many government lawyers. They're almost always wrong. Tell you what attorney-client privilege is. If Mr. Siegel disagrees with me, he can file a motion in court. The attorney-client privilege covers confidential communication by a client to an attorney, and by an attorney to a client, and where the client is seeking legal advice. It does not protect or disclose of who the attorney is or for what purpose. Legal advice is sought without getting into details of the communication. Okay. Whether or not the attorney submitted a bill for services rendered, whether or not a fee is paid, there is a payment of a fee that is not recovered by the attorney by attorney-client privilege. Now, you asserted you consulted him for legal advice, as I understand, at the end of 1973 or 74. I have not explored that. You said you had some consultation with him in 72, and I did not explore that. My question is, did you pay him a fee for the legal services that he was rendering to you at that time? I paid him legal fees in the past several years. I don't remember the dates. There have been bills rendered and fees paid. Does that relate back to this services performed in 1970? You mean the actual hours he spent in 1970? Fee payment made that you made to him. Fee payment you made to him in 1972, 73, and 74 is that for services rendered in 72 and 73 and 74? Correct. Or does that go back to 1970 where he was acting as your legal counsel of the Article 32 hearing? It's all the same case, 1974. We're still talking about the same case. All right, that answers my question. Now, during the court martial, Article 32, rather, did Mr. Kassab come down there as a witness on your behalf? Yes, he did. Well, the relationship with Mr. Kassab, he was my father-in-law, Colette's stepfather. Apart from legal aspects of the relationship, what was your professional relationship with him? It's very good. Not so good now. Did he visit you from time to time prior to the time that you were discharged from the Army? During the Article 32 hearing, but not after the Article 32 was ended. Would you call him up and talk to him time to time? Surely. Would he call you up and talk to you? Sure would. How frequently did you have these communications? It seemed to me fairly frequently. And were you holding anything back from him? No, unfortunately I made some things up. What'd you make up? The extent of my investigation, my own investigation. Alright, tell the grand jury what it was you made up. Let me just say, I was trying to rebuild my life, and I was doing, I was trying to get out of the Army, and our communication at that time was relatively good. I say my attorneys, my mother, and myself began to feel a little uneasy about Freddie Kassab. Mr. Kassab kind of took over the Article 32 hearing and a lot of the publicity surrounding it. He had held news conferences up at LaGuardia Airport. He was writing letters and firing off telegrams to anyone that would listen. It was all, was this public officials, congressmen, senator, things like that. Anyone who would listen, New York Times, Newsweek, magazines, radio, whoever he could talk to. And it was all in regards, I was the greatest guy that had ever lived. The Army is absolutely hosing me, giving me a bad deal. You didn't disagree with that, did you? No, that in fact is what happened. Alright, go ahead. He was aware of the Article 32 investigation he heard, except for little things. He knew the substance of all the testimony. He knew of all the witnesses who were there, and he came and testified. But what I was leading up to was really a sense of uneasiness. Freddie became a media freak, if you want me to be honest. Became a true media freak. He would call us up and say he'd say, what do you want me to do now? And Bernie would say, we'd like for you to know, I don't know, you just know. Has the CID been up there questioning any of Jeff's friends or Colette's friends? Could you ask them? Fine. Now Bernie, Mr. Siegel, would say, now Freddie, that's all I want you to do now. The night we'd be looking at TV, and he'd be holding a nationally covered news conference. And Bernie said many times, as did a lot of people, he's really kind of a fanatic. So I said, well, look, it's his stepdaughter and grandchildren. Okay, so now we're up to being sort of discharged out of the Army. Okay, so now I'm sort of being discharged out of the Army, and I say sort of because it was sort of a battle. It was a lot of letter writing, phone calling, congressmen calling, coming down to speed things up. You know, I was in a funny situation. I'm still in the Army. I've not been court-martialed. I'm in Article 32, which is a non-judicial, so I wasn't subject to double jeopardy. And I was kind of being counseled just to get out of the Army, just do your job, show up for work. If your commanding officer wants you to apply for your discharge, and Freddie's communications were to the effect, don't do anything dangerous. You know, you don't know what they'll do. Your room's bugged. This whole thing, I'll take care of it, and all the public statements fine. And he started talking to me frequently and writing me frequently. So it was like reference to when we got our own private investigation going. So then I said, well, I told him I've been in some bars, and I've got some leads. Critical mistake of my life. Tell him that I got some leads, and it started, and it was incessant. What do you have? Well, who have you found? And I lost my family, and I've been through the hearing, and I've been wrongfully accused. Colonel Rock's statement at the end of a 5-month grand jury is the charges aren't true. He said there was a lack of evidence. He said the charges are not true, right? So I'm trying to get out of the Army, and I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen. And what do I do? Do I drift? Do I go into my residency? Do I spend the rest of my life prowling around looking for these people? And Freddie hammering away, about this investigation that we're going to do. John Cummings was absolutely driving me nuts. Day and night phone calls. Not day and night literally, but frequent communications. When are we going to get a book together? Then the authors start calling. Hook you up with William Morrow in New York. Lawyers from Long Island, they say. I have a good friend who's a writer, and it became this unbelievable public thing. So I sat down and talked to my military lawyers. I talked to my civilian lawyers. I said, what do I do? And they said, do formal things. Do what you can. You're a physician, and then, go to Washington. So I got out of the Army. I went to Washington. Alan Wallenstein takes me around and introduced me to Sam Irving. Can you imagine going to a cocktail party and talking about a homicide? So I got the Justice Department to try to do things like that. Congressmen and lawyers advised me not to go on TV talk shows. So I go on a TV talk show. I got sick to my stomach. After that, I said I wasn't going to do it anymore. They didn't have a right. Meanwhile, Freddie's driving me crazy. What else? What have you found out? And I told him I found other people. So yes, to make a long story short, I implied that I killed the person. Absolute insanity. So his wife wants to know the details. Did they scream? Were they in agony? Well, I'll just say, I told him, I can't talk about it. My mother is over for dinner. My mother-in-law has another son. They have 2 kids. We're eating dinner, and she says, I wish Bobby's kids were killed and not yours. And I said, Mildred, how can you say that? I mean, really perverse. Just disgusting. Want revenge. And she says, I want revenge. And I said, I want revenge too. So I left for California. What the hell was I supposed to do? So I played along with this stupid game with Freddie. Freddie's an ex-intelligence officer in the Canadian Secret Service, or so he says. He lives this night and day. He was in all bars all through World War II, listening to secret conversations. He was at D-Day. He was on the battleship on V-Day. He was everywhere at all times, so I played this game. And finally I gave up, and I wrote a 10 to 15 page letter. And I said, Freddie, I didn't do it. I didn't do this. When did you write that letter saying I didn't do it? I don't know. To MacDonald? When I got to California, it was crazy. So how long did you play this game? I don't know, months, verbally with him. It was always the one incident. It was always the one thing. Mildred wanted to hear the details. Did they scream? Were they in agony? Mildred's Colette's mother, right? Mother, yeah. She's been bizarre for a long time. How can you sit at dinner and say that you wish your other grandkids were killed? So I made this tremendous mistake, this fantastic error. I tried to be a doctor. I tried to rebuild my life, and I moved away, and that's my 3 crimes. Tell me, Dr. MacDonald, were you in fact investigating this matter? Yes. Had you found one of those persons? What would you have done? I don't know. Would you have done what you said you would have done? Who knows, Mr. Woerheide, I may have. When I think of giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to my wife and kids, I think, yeah, it doesn't seem so hard to visualize. From your knowledge of psychiatry, psychology, would you not say that that's a perfectly normal reaction? Sure. And would you not say that you're a normal human being? I would. And if you encountered one of these people under the appropriate circumstances, would you have done what you said you were going to do? It's conceivable. There's a time lapse. I'd been through this. It was a different, like, in April, before I'd been questioned. That's a different time frame. It's conceivable. I still think about that. I still get a flash when I see something. I see a lot of dopers in my practice, and it crosses my mind, but I always think later. Well, it crosses your mind. How I can work so goddamn hard to saving the next life of an overdose. What the hell do I care? Does it cross your mind that perhaps you should do them in? Not specifically do them in. Helping them? No, not specifically do them in. It crossed my mind. Why the hell do I break my butt and my nurses break their butts and a whole emergency room to save this creep who's got like $20,000, $10,000, something cash in his pocket from a recent sale, and he shoots up some fresh heroin? I resuscitate him. What the hell does I do that for? But I always do it. I've thought about that. I always do it. My nurses think I'm a good physician. I think I carry it to an extreme. What would I do if I had to testify in a trial against these people? Would I sneak a gun in and shoot them? Well, you know yourself best. What do you think? Probably not. But at least you thought about it. Sure, wouldn't you? And you might come in with a gun in your pocket, whether or not you used it or... Sure. I have a letter dated November 17th, 1970. I won't read the whole letter. It's signed Jeff. It's a postscript with J on it. It's addressed to Fred, and it's in the talk, and it talks in the early part about certain material that is to be furnished to Lowenstein, who I think is Congressman Lowenstein. It says you could send full news clippings reminding me of transcripts, taped interviews with Shaw, Evany, and Grabner, and other intercepted official stuff. What is this reference to other intercepted official stuff? We had the official Army version by telegram of the hair incident on the Post. I don't know who sent it to us. Someone. Whoever intercepts Army telegram Xeroxed it, sent it to us. And a copy was sent without signing a name or anything. Did it come through the mail? Through the mail. And were there items of this nature? Yes, I suppose. There's lots of loose notes and stuff and handwritten notes. That's all part of my attorney-client relationship that I have been told. It says that you're beginning to work on your speech for a news conference when you get out. And you say you've delivered memos. I suppose that means mimeographs of speech and photos if necessary to Newsday, Post, Long Island, Advance, and Times. The morning of the news conference, then you talked about the timing of the conference and where it took place. And on page 4, I will deny our phone conversation today if anyone ever asks. Is the phone conversation you're referring to is the one you said when you killed one of, I don't know if I said killed, one of the intruders? I don't know if I said killed. I probably used the stupid phrase that we all used in the Army for assassination teams, Stuff will use terms like stuff like eliminate and with extreme prejudice, cops and robbers shit personally. And yeah, and I'm sure you can figure out why what must be done must be done. You know, that's what's interesting, Mr. Woerheide. You're not the only person that has ever that you're not the only person that has every news person that has ever talked to Freddie has a copy of the letter. So it's nothing shocking, it's nothing like surprising. I have a copy of another letter. It's dated 6th November 1971, so that's approximately a year later. It reads, in parts, it was obvious from the way justice. It was obvious that only one way for justice to be met is for me to do it. I'm doing it, have been doing it, 4 trips to North Carolina and Florida in the last 3 months, and I will continue to do it. And I will continue to do it as long as my strength holds up. Broken hand last trip, $2,000 spent. The only legit help I see is private eye type, most of which I have found is no more competent than local cops. My next major goal is a large sum of money via an advance from a publisher for the next purpose, the first chapter of my book, and I assume that refers to your first chapter has been written. The outline is done, and still we are dicking with publishers. They won't come across fast. Plus, John Gumman's mouthing off the publishers who have hurt the book. That's not a story. He wanted the story. When he failed to produce, I went elsewhere, but he got so resentful he has been sandbagging our efforts. Now, from back to this paragraph, tell us about the 4 trips to North Carolina, Florida in the last 3 months and the broken hand. That was part of this. There were no 4 trips. I was keeping Freddie happy. He's crazy. This man's absolute insanity. The man is a fanatic. He's an alcoholic fanatic. He has spent years in that house and reread every single thing on this case for 4 years. That's a bizarre reaction to the tragedy. They haven't seen a friend or friends, and they come over to the house and they try to take them out for dinner and they slam the door in their face. The guy is a fanatic. Let's talk about your statement. That is the sort of the beginning of the end. It was already obvious when I got back to New York to see my mother and see briefly Mildred and Freddie that there was a whole different thing going on. And this really is continuing this stupid game until I finally go up with enough nerve to write him a letter and tell him the truth. What's the purpose of making the statement in the particular time? This is November 6th, I believe, November 9th. Rather 1971. You mean the letter itself? This statement about making 4 trips to North Carolina, Florida in the last 3 months, and you were going to continue to do this. And you said you had a broken hand on the last trip. I didn't have a broken hand, and it cost $2,000. I'm telling you, Freddie. I was telling Freddie this great detective story that I was doing all this work on the case because that's what he says he was doing. Well, all this explicit detail and color, like the broken hand, were you implying that you broke your hand slapping somebody or something like that? I suppose, Mr. Woerheide, my actions during that period of time, I apologize for them. Jesus, that doesn't mean I murdered my wife and kids. It was stupid. I regretted it. I regretted it every single day since I wrote the damn letter to Freddie Kassab. I regretted it the day I started it. How the hell do you tell a father-in-law that you've been leading him on about this investigation? At this time you're involved in, you talk about writing a book. At this time, are you involved in writing a book? It's never been written. There are a lot of interviews with authors and publishers. The publishers I went to see see advance material from the author, and the authors want advance money from the publisher. It's sort of a catch-22 type situation. And all these supposedly helpful friends of mine want me to write a book. I didn't want to write a book. So you keep putting them off, and I had interviews with William Morrow Agency in New York, Ernest Kane and Gitlin, something like that, some from the firm in New York. And several people wrote beginning chapters and several people wrote beginning chapters and tried to get front money. When it became apparent I was going to have to sit down with this person for a period of months, go over the whole thing, and sort of live with an author, I said, screw it. I'm not even going to go do it. I was trying to rebuild a life, and that's when I decided I've got to clear this up. So I wrote Freddie a letter, and I said to him, what I told you in the past is not true. That's a later letter, right? Yes, but this time we are talking about to publishers. Did you have any contact with John Cummings? No. Did you sit down with him to make a preparation for writing the book? No, Cummings is an oil newspaper man. He assumes all these things and made grand statements to everyone all the time. He was an author of the MacDonald story for a book, and unfortunately my attorneys felt I should give him that other interview down in Fort Bragg, because Newsday, it was my mother's home, my hometown, the Kasab area. They all live there. They should get a more legitimized version of what happened, but that's all. But Cummins was never my choice. I don't like the man. By the way, I think it's appropriate to mention at this time, Dr. MacDonald, I put in front of you, and you have it before you at this time, a Xerox copy of the Cummins story that was printed in Newsday. And this is, I told you that I would furnish you with a copy of it, and tomorrow I will ask you further questions about it. Now, the next paragraph of this letter, the one difference between you and I is I don't think you see the fact that justice will not bring my family back. I want revenge, preferably not brutal revenge, and I don't care about justice anymore. There's no justice in the case, so you haven't noticed it. You act as though you're on a noble cause. I think the cause is ugly, brutal, but necessary. I will do it. I've done some of it. Now let's talk about the statement. Is that again an allusion to the statement you made back in November about having knocked off for? Yes. Whatever the term was you used, right. One of the alleged assailants, which you told Freddie that you had to run down. What I was trying to tell Freddie is that he was on a soapbox all the time, and he made it sound like this was some glorious thing to do. He didn't understand them. Never heard Freddie or Mildred say, I want Colette back. Never. They wanted to see someone hurt. What the hell does that do? There's a letter on the stationery of Dr. Jeffrey R. MacDonald, MD. The date is March 22, 1973. It's addressed, Dear Mildred. Is this the letter you referring to? And when you referred to it, you said you'd sent Freddie a later letter. No. To place this in the context, let me read it. I did tell Fred some things after I left the Army that were 100% not true. These things were particularly true, I maligned them to, I guess, help my own feelings of inadequacy, and also I hope to isolate myself with these comments and allow my mental status to clear. Unfortunately, Fred has misread the importance of these comments. Does that reflect your recollection to as whether or not this letter you are referring to? I remember it being as I addressed it to Freddie, Mildred, and I believe Helen. So there's no letter along this line, is that correct? I think so. I'm sure I addressed it all three. Helen was living with them. Helen is Colette's aunt. She was living with them, and she was closer to Colette than Colette's mother. Well, here's another portion of the letter that might serve to refresh your recollection. I truly hope the absurd tales Fred told me about on the phone about girls are not our daydreams. They are certainly not true. They're not facts. I never lied to you about extramarital affairs. I never had an affair. I did date sleep with a very rare girl away from home, because we discussed it. Freddie all knew it. The rest is complete garbage. That's true. That's what I said to her. Now, why were you saying this at this time in this letter? There had been a phone call from Freddie that he had called me and he called me up. He was drunk, as always. It was in the middle of the night, and he was ranting and raving, and that he had maybe, I'm exaggerating probably, but I recollect him saying that he had just come up from Fort Bragg, and he said he had 15 affidavits from that MPs were supplying me with girls while I was locked in my BOQ room. So I said, Freddie, that's the most ludicrous comment I ever heard. It's obscene, perverse, and it's incredible, he said. I don't know. He said sworn affidavits from 15 girls in Fayetteville, and the MPs or the CID or someone was supplying with females while I was locked up in BOQ, and I said, Freddie, you're crazy. Did you have any females in the BOQ? After I was released from custody, sure. While you're in custody? While I was in custody, females in my BOQ room? Yes? You mean other than friends and relatives? I mean, was there a girl who would come down and have sexual relationships with you during the period that you were in the custody at your BOQ? No, afterwards. Now, during this dim period, there's no such girl. There was a girl that I used to sit outside with at the MP guard and do some reading outside, and she was a BOQ clerk or something in another office at the BOQ. And it started out, she walked by and she said, Hi, aren't you Captain MacDonald? And I'm standing there with an MP guard behind me, and I said, yes, I am Captain MacDonald. And it started out, and then like a month later, she'd come by and gave me a tuna fish sandwich while I'm sitting out there. After I dated her, I took her out on a double date with one of my escort officers, as a matter of fact. While you're in the BOQ under escort? No, one of my escort officers, who became sort of a friend after I was released from custody, she got another girl, and we went on a double date. We went to a movie and had dinner or something like that. Girl's name? I don't know. You don't remember her name? Jeffrey R. McDonald nodded negatively. How frequently did you see her? I probably dated her several times before I left and after December. Before I left him, it was before December. At this time, you say Freddie purported to have F-dates from 15 girls? That's the sense of the conversation, 15. You say that's erroneous? Erroneous? There were not 15 girls? Will you say there were no girls? You mean in regards to having sexual relations in my BOQ room while I'm under guard with an MP outside the door? Yes? Yeah, I'd say that's pretty damn erroneous.
Mr. Woerheide, it's 4:10, thereabouts, and we have some people that want to get on the highway.
Well, I'm sorry, I wasn't watching my watch and I went on so long. I suggest we excuse the grand jury and we commence tomorrow morning, at 9:30 in the morning.
Right, sir.
Do you have any idea of the length of my testimony? Any idea at all? Yes, you can see it as soon as we have a long way. You can see it. We have a long way to go, and I know that it's going to take all day tomorrow anyway, and it might turn into the following day, if at all possible. Mr. Siegel has things he can't break. Thursday, he'd really like to finish tomorrow. You have my Lieutenant Malley here, don't you? Michael Malley? Yes. Or Captain Malley, or whatever, I still refer to. He's a civilian, Mr. Woerheide. You need to get things right. But, now, manners, but when I see his name on these documents, that I give him a military title, we'll try to keep that in mind, do the best we can. Are you looking forward to testimony on Thursday? Do you actually see that as a strong possibility? I see the strong possibility, Dr. MacDonald. I don't know. It's an inconvenience to the grand jury as well. It's an inconvenience to you and Mr. Signal, but I foresee a possibility. But I can't absolutely say at this time because actually we've got some matters that don't relate to February 16th and 17th for sure. And we really haven't started on the 16th and 17th of February.
You're excused.
And with that, day 2 of the federal grand jury in the Eastern District of North Carolina, the United States versus Jeffrey R. MacDonald, ended.